Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the March 15th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference and is also being broadcast on cable channel 15 and streamed online by FCTV. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen and heard in your background. I'd like to thank our staff for their continued support to this commission and their diligence assisting applicants. We are missing Melissa at the moment. We understand she's in the middle of a blizzard, but may be joining us later. However, we have a quorum. We're moving forward. I'd like to remind you guys, if you're commenting, I'll call on each of you at the appropriate time so we're not tripping over each other, and that all votes still are being done by roll call. When I call your name, please state your name and your vote, even if you've made the motion or the second. To our public participants, at any time during this meeting, you may enter any comments or questions via the chat function. At the appropriate time, they will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are located on the agenda. Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022 regarding COVID-19 allows for full public participation. Therefore, if you'd like to be heard on a specific hearing, let us know via the chat function. Then at the appropriate time, I will call for public comment. When you are selected, you will be moved into the hearing as a participant. As such, you must have your video enabled, be succinct and respectful of others. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. Regarding RDAs, under a request for determination of applicability, the applicant is asking the commission to determine if the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and or the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw apply to their proposed project. A negative determination is that the provisions of the act and or the bylaw do not apply. Therefore, the project may proceed as proposed. However, a positive determination means that the provisions of the act and or the bylaw do in fact apply. Therefore, the project would require a notice of intent application. Therefore, as an applicant, you want to hear a negative determination. And for the benefit of anyone waiting for a particular hearing tonight, and so that you're not waiting unnecessarily, the following hearings are expected to be continued. 0 Charles Lane and 0 Low Way. All right. First up tonight, vote minutes, March 1st, 2023.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of, March 1st, 2023, with any changes that other people might make.
Bird, second.
Okay. Does anybody have anything they saw in there that they'd like to have changed, adjusted, reworded? All right. So we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as submitted of March 1st. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted the minutes of March 1st. Next up, minutes for March 8th, 2023.
Make a motion to approve the minutes. Patton.
Gladfelter, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes of 3/8 as submitted. There's no edits. All right. Again, motion and a second is to accept the minutes of March 8th. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted the minutes as submitted. Thank you, Kristen. Next up, under other business, request to install a permeable reactive barrier at Lower Coonamessett River. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Ken Foreman up. Ken is from the Water Quality Management Committee, and Kristen Rathjen. She is from ScienceWares and is the consultant for the Water Quality Committee. Ken would like to do a pilot project down at the Lower Coonamessett and would like an endorsement from this board to submit a grant. And Ken, I'm sorry, I forget who you're submitting that grant to.
It would be to SNAP.
Okay, thank you.
And it's sort of, both on behalf of the Water Quality Management Committee as well as the Marine Biological Lab where I am.
Okay, thank you.
I sent you all an outline. Hopefully you got it of the goals. And if people have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Do you want to just give a brief explanation or just kind of a brief overview of what you'd like to do, Ken?
Sure. Well,
Thank you.
very brief. So we've done some work in Waquoit and elsewhere using these wood chip based permeable reactive barriers. We've shown pretty clearly that they denitrify, they remove the nitrates in groundwater. And we know that about half the nutrient load entering Great Pond is coming through the Coonamessett River. Now, of course, there's been this proposal for dense development on a 43-acre parcel just to the west side of the river, something like 300 to 900 units proposed through a 40B. So that's going to add even more nutrient loading, even if they have an on-site treatment plant. It sounds, talking to Amy Lowell, it sounds like she would rather not see them divert that water to the wastewater plant in West Falmouth. So we're just thinking that, we're going to need some additional treatment. And this would really be exploratory. It would be a test barrier, small scale, looking at how we could install it to the appropriate depth to have the results that we would like to see, and exploring what the impacts might be downstream, on the river. But it, again, very small scale. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
Thank you. First, I'd like to say your definition of small is considerably different than mine. The borings are how many meters deep? The column?
In order to get to the depth necessary to, reach all the nutrients, we have to go something like 50 feet deep, 30 to 50 feet deep. And that's really one of the things we want to explore is, if we go shallower and draw up nutrients from depth. But this is basically like installing a well. It's just a larger diameter than a typical 2-inch well. These are going to be something like, we hope, on the order of 18 inches in diameter. And we might put in 5 or 6, depending on budget, 5 or 6 borings spaced some distance apart.
Thank you. It seems like a great idea. Completely, passive approach to it, and it seemed bigger to me than I thought. When I saw the map, there was considerably more than 5 borings.
Well, yeah, we might, if we can afford it, we would put
Thank you,
in more.
Mr. Chairman.
All right. All right, we have another side of the presentation. But just to clarify, Mr. Foreman, the grant application is site specific, correct?
Yes.
And is that necessary?
I think it is, from the point, SNEP is very applied in their perspective on things. And so I think that in order to get them interested, part of the goal here would be to say, look, we have this dense development up gradient. And so we think there's going to be a, significant plume coming from that. We need to prepare to remediate.
All right. Betsy.
Thanks, Jamie. Well, I don't think this is a good idea. And may I share my screen, Jamie?
Yes. Yep.
So I have a little PowerPoint and then I have a little video to show you after this. Okay, this proposal is for a test project, but as you will have noticed from the maps that Ken sent us, what he's worried about, the development he's worried about, isn't even in the lower part of the lower river. But what is there, what has already been done, is $4 million worth of tax-supported federal and state and local supported restoration. And the goals of the restoration are a healthy, self-sustaining river and wetland system that supports fish and other aquatic organisms, to increase coastal resiliency, which includes opening up a floodplain in case of storms, having a naturally vegetated system, and also removing nitrogen and other pollutants. And the third is to increase recreational and educational opportunities. First, I want to talk, I just want to mention, and those of you who have been to the recent talks about Coonamessett restoration know that one of our major goals was to restore a sea-run brook trout population. And Steve Hurley started this project in 2013 and 2014. Brook trout had been gone from the river for well more than 50 years, but he introduced young brook trout to the upper river, and they've reproduced every year. It's been wildly successful. And what's also been successful is that the brook trout are now reproducing in the lower river because we connected the lower river to the groundwater seepages, strong groundwater seepages at the edge of the river where the water is cold and it's oxygenated. So just to go over Jen actually got 2 potential sites for the restoration. I might notice that this river is the channel prior to restoration, but this is one site that Ken gave us, and this is the site that Kristen sent to Jen. And here's what the boreholes would look like. Ken mentioned how deep they would be. What Ken didn't tell you is the way these systems work is, in order to denitrify water, it uses up a lot of oxygen. It's the preferred electron acceptor. We're not going to get into nitrogen chemistry, but oxygen must be highly depleted before denitrification occurs. So this is the site. Can you see okay, this is the site where Ken proposed to have those boreholes. This is the site that Kristen reported. The river now is 50% longer in this lower stretch of the restoration. These 3 sites show areas where channels were created. Partly was the perimeter ditch, and it was added on so that it connected to the river. So there are actually 4 areas. I have 3 outlined here. And the idea is that even though this part of the river gets warm in the summertime, trout can swim through the warm water, but then they go into these cold water refuges, highly oxygenated refuges, to reproduce. This shows you these areas in more detail. And I'm going to show you a film in a couple of minutes that was taken this past fall right in this area. The other thing is these cranberry bog restorations, and you'll remember that this is the first restoration on Cape Cod, the third restoration in Massachusetts. One of the goals is to determine the efficacy of wetland restoration of former cranberry bogs on the nitrogen removal. How much removal occurs initially in the first year or two, and how long does it take to increase the rate of removal in time? And Chris Neal, Linda Deegan, and Casey Kennedy, who's from the UMass Cranberry Station, have been doing a study on nitrogen dynamics in the Coonamessett River from May 2018 to April 2022, and they're continuing this study. And I just might add that one of the goals of all these restorations, the first 3 restorations, and then others have been added to it now, is to see how quickly some of these ecosystem services return to the river. So what they did was they monitored nitrogen concentrations upstream and downstream twice monthly for 4 years. They installed deep water ground wells. Those of you who have been out there, the blue wells, to measure profiles of oxygen concentration, nitrogen concentrations, and they estimated nitrogen uptake by the restored wetlands in the lower river. People who went to the talk at the library in January saw this, but this is starting with Coonamessett Pond. These are the sampling stations. And as Ken said, the concentration in the lower river, it gets higher and higher as the further south you go. This is the part of the river that has developed, more densely developed on either side. But I want to point out to you that when you take measurements in the winter, it's always higher than in the summer, because in the summer, plants take up a lot of the nitrogen. And so these naturally vegetated wetlands that we've restored the system to will be taking more and more of this nitrogen up as those systems mature. So Chris and Linda and Casey did 3 studies. One is they asked how much nitrogen is removed from when it first comes into the river. This is actually, I named it Hurley's Creek as we did it. How much nitrogen is removed from when it first comes in to when it actually enters the river? And you can see the 4 creeks they measured, it was between 40 and 80% of the nitrogen. But half the nitrate removed in the small creeks. Then they did a study looking at how much nitrogen came in the river itself and how much was coming in from groundwater. So the total is 301 milligrams. Total out was 153. The total uptake was about 50%. So the proposed project would negatively impact the Coonamessett River goals in the following ways. Even this small pilot project would impact the brook trout habitat. It would impact the ongoing study on the removal of nitrogen by the restored wetlands, because there's no way you could separate the 2 different systems. And obviously there would be, perhaps temporary, but there would be impact to the trail. And let me show you one other thing. This is a video that Steve took this fall. He had just collected the fish and then measured them, and then he was restoring them to the creek. You can see that
Betsy, we don't see the video.
You don't?
No, we see your PowerPoint presentation.
Okay. Wait a second. What I'll do is I'll stop share and I'll share again. Can I do that again?
Yes, and it looks like we lost. Oh, no, Ken's right there.
Let me go back to the start, all right? Notice the vertical logs, this part of the system.
No.
There are the trout in breeding color, and then here are younger age classes. And that's all I have for now, Jamie.
Thank you. All right. All right, Ken, I see your colleague. It looks like she left.
No,
No, Kristen's still there.
Kristen's still here.
Okay, maybe it's my screen then. All right. Kristen, do you have anything to add at this point?
So one of the reasons that this site is appealing is, as you know, the town is trying to move forward with basically reaching the TMDL goals for Great Pond, and with the proposed sewering for the T-Ticket and Acapesket sewer service areas, the town's looking at $100 million at least on the two phases of those projects, and there's still a significant nitrogen load that needs to come out of Great Pond to meet the TMDL. And we know that 50% of the nitrogen load's coming from the Coonamessett, and the town does not have plans to extend the sewer north of 28. So we're looking at ways where we can intercept that nitrogen passively in a cost-effective manner. So that was one of the reasons for looking at that site. Ken and I sent two different locations. One of the things I had done a while ago was I used the USGS particle tracking model, and I did some reverse particle tracking to see where in the watershed inputs were coming from. So on that lower corner kind of catches a little bit more of where that proposed development is further upstream. But I have graphics that are showing kind of the contribution areas and looking at some of the more dense neighborhoods and where the water's tracking to in specific portions of the river. So that's kind of why there were two different locations on there.
Yeah, I could add that, we're certainly happy to work with the Conservation Commission on the specific location for the test. If Betsy feels that the particular spot that we showed is not ideal, what we really should do is walk out there and, do an on-site, and, look-see. But one point I wanted to make was that, I know what among the things that have been done in the river is to add, for example, woody debris to restore the structure. And, from talking to Chris, I know part of the hope was that this would foster denitrification. And I'm sure there is, as you add organic matter to the whole system, you will see more denitrification occurring naturally. The way this whole wood chip barrier thing came to be was folks who were tracking septic plumes up at the University of Waterloo in Canada noticed that these plumes disappeared in these high organic sediments due to denitrification, and came up with the idea of, we could artificially enhance the organic content of sediments by adding wood. And so that's what people have been working on since. And that's really all we're trying to do in this project is enhance that natural process by adding this, which is really just a normal substrate. We're not injecting emulsified vegetable oil or some exotic substance.
That's exactly why we have woody debris in these side streams. And that's why, as people ask about the pine trees there, eventually that's going to flood from a hurricane or upstream stormwater, and those pine trees will die, and that will add. So over time, there's going to be more and more debris. You're
Yeah, no, I
probably
think
right.
that will help for sure. But the problem is that the residence time of, that surface flowing water just isn't long enough to achieve the denitrification you want in the groundwater. Because, so it takes on the order of 6 to 12 hours to achieve that removal of nitrates. At least that's what our experiments have shown so far. So I just think I think Chris has been a little disappointed that they haven't seen more removal.
Well, he's seeing 50%. I think that's pretty good.
Some of that is uptake. And as you pointed out, it comes back out in the winter.
I would like to add that Chris Neal was present when some ideas were discussed as we finished off the PRB project at Shorewood Drive at the head of Great Pond, and found that to not be as effective as originally it was thought to be, looking at other locations in the watershed. Chris Neal happened to be at that meeting of the Water Quality Management Committee when we talked about some of these sites initially, and he did not raise any concerns.
He's concerned, I can tell you.
Betsy, let her speak.
He didn't raise any concerns to us at that point, as far as impacts to his project or general concerns with the concept.
All right, we're going to poll commissioners. Courtney.
I'll hold for a second.
All right. So I don't know if this is a question for Kristen or Ken, but why this site? I mean, you're talking about a development that isn't really in the permitting stage yet. And it just seems like it's a duplication of services, if you will, that, part of the restoration project is to serve this purpose. And now you're piggybacking another project. I think the concept is great. I just question the not so much the specific within the lower Coonamessett, but just the Coonamessett at all. I mean, there must be other parts of town. So why this specific general area?
So for the
Kristen, you
Great
want to
Pond
address that?
watershed, like I said, the town is coming up short with the nitrogen removal plans to meet the TMDL. And there's not plans for sewering, and it's fairly densely developed north of 28. And even with what Chris is seeing with the nitrogen removal, we're still a couple of 1,000 kilograms short of the goal for the TMDL, and that doesn't account for the build out or any changes, the increases in nitrogen since the MEP was done. So as part of the Water Quality Committee's charge is to look at the alternatives, cost-effective means to not necessarily sewer everything. The contributions from what's already developed exceed. With the proposed development, that would be above and beyond. So it was kind of pick a location that would be needed now and could potentially serve in the future if that went forward.
That's going to be years down the road, right? I mean, how long is it going to take to get this thing established?
Which the
PRB?
development? The 40B?
No, your project.
Oh, our project? Which aspect of the project?
Would you be able to measure results?
Oh, yeah, we would be able to measure results, I would think, within months of putting it in.
Talking a year down the road, 3 years down the road?
If the funding were provided, I think we would have to have results within a year.
When we put the emulsified vegetable oil PRB in at Shorewood Drive, we saw results 3 months after because it was monitored quarterly. We had tangible results where we could see the nitrogen reductions.
All right, so I'm going to get to everybody. So just one more thing. I lost my track. I'll come back. All right, Kevin.
I guess my question is, it seems as though getting the grant takes a certain amount of time. I know you can't say, well, it's 6 months or it's a year, but there some vague time frame that you can point to that says you would get measurable results from the project you're proposing within a certain number of years or a certain number of months? Or can you not even get close to such a prediction?
No, I mean that the letter of inquiry to SNEP is due when, Kristen? It's due like
April 7th.
April 7th. So first of all, then we would find out whether they thought it was a good idea and were willing to fund. At which point we would have to submit a full proposal. So I think within 6 months, we would know whether we had funding, and then we would move forward with construction, again, as soon as the money arrived, and start the monitoring process. So, I think we're talking about something within the next results to the point of being able to report on the efficacy of it all within 2 years. Does that seem right to you, Kristen?
So I believe money, if you get selected for a full proposal and you're awarded it, money comes in the fall. And then you have to write your quality assurance plan. So reasonably, the earliest I think installation would occur would be next spring. And then results, first quarter monitoring would be summer next year, I think would be your optimistic timeline.
Okay, thank you. I have a general idea of what's going to happen. Having gone through the process myself, I know how unreliable these predictions are, but I have an idea of it. Thank you.
How would you differentiate the results from the restoration project versus this project?
Well, we would put in monitoring wells just downstream, just down gradient in the not in the river. So our wells would be located. Part of what did motivate this thought was seeing some of Chris's data and seeing how high those nitrate concentrations were in the groundwater. So we ought to be able to see, with these monitoring wells, we ought to be able to see up gradient within and down gradient from the barrier, very dramatic differences. That's certainly what we saw in Wacoit when we installed our PRB there. We can draw the nitrates at the head of Wacoit Bay down below 1/10 of a milligram per liter. The best the wastewater plant can do is 3 milligrams per liter total nitrogen. So it's very effective.
All right, Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to say a few words and ask some questions. First of all, the goals of the Water Quality Committee and the goals of the Coonamessett River Restoration Project are quite different. This river valley was restored primarily for fish habitat. Close to $5 million of state and federal funding have gone into this effort with 11 years of planning and implementation. And if, Betsy is correct, and this type of system is going to change the water chemistry so that the brook trout either can't survive, can't breed, or just won't use the area, it kind of defeats the massive effort the town, the state has gone through to restore this system. I understand the importance of the denitrification and meeting that TMDL, but again, 11 years, $5 million in state and federal funding have gone into this project for the goal of restoring the fish habitat of the Coonamessett River. So that would be one concern the staff would have, that it would jeopardize future funding efforts that we are, applying for the upper Coonamessett. The second thing I'd like to know is that ADA trail was close to $100,000 to create. And where's the money going to come from to restore that trail to that ADA compliant standard after you install this system? Because if you take the whole trail system and you're looking at a good chunk of it, you're talking, tens of thousands of dollars just to repair the trail after those borings are done. So is that being taken into consideration, or are we going to be forced to look for additional funding to repair the ADA compliant trail? So that's another concern that I would have.
As far as I'm concerned, I think we have to put everything back the way we found it. It's pretty
So where would
simple.
that money come from, Ken?
It would come from within the grant. I mean, it's
It would
part
come
of the
from the grant?
construction.
Okay.
Part of the construction, you make the holes, you got to cover them up. You got to restore the landscape to the way it was when you started. The other thing is, look, I feel that we don't have different goals. I think we want to remediate and mitigate the nitrogen inputs, and we don't want to do it at the expense of the river. So by putting in a small test barrier, we can try to evaluate, just how likely it is that it would impact the river. And if we see that we're getting anaerobic water going, a small plume of anaerobic water reaching the river, we're going to say, maybe this is not a good idea.
And then how would you remove 50 feet of wood chips if it was required to be removed?
I don't think we would. I think, we're not talking about, given the flow that's in that river, I don't think we're talking about an impact that's going to have any widespread effects. So it wouldn't be, I'm sure there are areas where there's seeps now that have lower oxygen because they're going through naturally high organic, soils. And again, you're adding organic matter to the river specifically to achieve that. So I certainly would not want to put in 1,000-foot barrier that was going to then drive a large portion of that river anaerobic. That would not be the goal. But we need to figure out whether that in fact is a real threat if we locate this thing far enough away.
And let's say it does work, Ken, then what would happen? Would you come back to the Concom and ask, as you said at your water quality committee meeting on Monday, line the river up with this all the way up the river?
I don't know the answer to that. I think that it would have to be, I think that we, rather than working at cross purposes, we should be working together to come up with a strategy. And I know, Betsy's already mentioned that part of the goal of the river restoration was to improve the nitrogen removal within the river itself. And that, of course, is what Chris is looking at. I'm just not sure that's going to be enough to achieve the level of nutrient reduction we need. And, all these sea-run fish, they got to go through the estuary too. So if the estuary is in bad shape, that's not good.
Okay. It will need to be, if the project goes forward, it will need to be filed most likely under a notice of intent.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
Continuing with
one last point is, at this point, I just, in order to submit a letter of inquiry, I would not be comfortable doing that if we did not have that you guys who control the property, say it's okay to try this. I don't think I don't think that we can go to SNEP and say, we want to put this thing there, but we're not sure that we have permission to even construct it.
Well, yeah. Courtney, I'll get back to you. We've already had one spot. Don't worry. Maury?
First, if I'm not mistaken, there was a forum that you had in December discussing this down in Hui. Did you have a conference kind of thing?
Matt might have had one on did he have something on?
I don't know. Because there was something online. I'm just going to start off with, this is a big, maybe not a big project to you, but after all the work that they've done in the Coonamessett, it's really kind of disturbing to me that we'd be testing and studying and playing in this area that was worked so hard at to restore the river. And now you want to jump on board and see how it works for your little project. I find it a little disingenuous that we weren't given more information before this hearing. If you really wanted us to be involved, an invite would have been nice so we could have maybe been more on the ground level to understand it. Tonight, I would no way in God's creation give a yay to move forward with this project. Is not nearly enough information for me to make any real decision that would be, I think, intelligent. I think Chris needs longer time to continue the study of the nitrogen issues, and that was one of the whole reasons that they were doing this. And to mix the two together, I think it might be not very consistent with how he's going to try to work it out. Are there other areas in town? I mean, we have Little Pond, we have Perch Pond, we have all these other ponds that are that aren't sewered, that have dense population, high nitrogen levels, that aren't in the middle of an already restored river complex that took years to do, and to go find a better place to go to do it than right there. And do you have any alternatives if this doesn't work so that you can do your study?
Well, I mean, there's plenty of possible locations for sure. The Perch Pond, we're about to propose additional sewer construction around Perch Pond. So that is why it wouldn't be appropriate there, because the answer to Perch Pond is going to be in the sewering.
But if this permeable barrier is so wonderful that you're touting, why not try it there before we spend $100 million to sewer it?
It's just, I don't have a good answer for that, actually.
Well, maybe we should try and find one, because I'm a taxpayer and I would like if we could not have to sewer that whole area through a little creativity like we did with oyster beds and shellfish and denitrifying systems. Sewering is not always the answer, and you're telling us that right now. And I think maybe if you came up with told us of a few other sites that you've even explored that might be more feasible, not to interfere with the Coonamessett River project. The other thing is, what's the life expectancy of these reactive barriers?
So the one that we installed in McCoy has been in there 17 years and is still functioning. We've actually done experiments where we have excavated wood chips from that barrier and compared their performance to new wood chips. We did some of that work up at the Wareham wastewater facility and found that while they don't denitrify quite at the same rate, they still are quite effective. And within 20 hours or so, they can draw down about 10 milligrams per liter to very low levels. So it seems to be pretty long-lived.
Okay. And then I think that was, where you said the TMDLs, where is the area that has to be at a lower level?
Kristen?
So the watershed as a whole, when you look at the Massachusetts Estuaries Project report and you look at the sub-watersheds, we calculate what kind of projected removals are coming from the proposed sewering in the lower portion, and there's still a significant contribution coming north of 28. We have the data from the work that Chris Neal has done. We have work that from USGS, they did some monitoring in the river as well to define some of the reach sheds of where your nitrogen inputs are coming in. And so that's one of the targets of where your high inputs are coming.
Okay. And then one other, just a comment. You know, none of us can see the future, and it was a 900 unit project on Sandwich Road. And none of us know if that is going to be built, if it's going to be permitted. I mean, that's just, we don't know. But I think that if and when it does move forward, probably a reactive barrier on their own property, along with a tertiary treatment, would be sensible. I don't know. But I mean, I think some of the onus, I don't want to pay my tax dollars or all the work that the Coonamessett group did to help out a developer, let him come up or them come up with a way to treat their nitrogen like they're trying to make every homeowner do it. And I don't think that the Coonamessett should take the brunt of their project. And that's all. Thank you.
Let me add to that. I would agree completely with that. And I sat on the zoning board, as you know, for many years, and every single time I suggested that we make remediation, even just putting an advanced on-site system onto these developments, we were overturned when it was appealed because it made the project uneconomic. And that's the criteria at the state level. So it's really been a struggle to control nutrient loading from these high density developments.
All right. Melissa.
Thank you, Jamie. Thanks for the presentations, everyone. I know I wasn't visible, but I was here. A question, just to confirm, the Coonamessett River flows into the Great Pond. So we're talking about the TMDLs in the Great Pond that aren't being met. I really liked what Maury suggested about trying this, elsewhere right now, because this 40B that everyone's getting really jumpy about is barely on the drawing board, or it's on the drawing board, but hasn't even started the permitting process. And we know that, you said your timeline would be about a year or two before you got your first bits of data. And it's going to take a lot longer for this 40B to be moving forward, if it even moves forward. And I'm thinking that Perch Pond might, or another pond in town, another place in town, anywhere, might be a better spot to just get started on this. But I'd really like to see, obviously we can't stop you from writing a grant proposal.
Well, I don't think we'd be successful if we didn't have permission to use the site. So
yeah,
you really can.
That's true. Yeah, I guess so. I was hoping that that you might be able to talk to Chris and Linda a little more and actually find a spot that would be useful if it must be in the Coonamessett River, to find a spot that would be amenable to both projects that you could work with. But yeah, this big 40B that we're all worried about. I've always wondered why they don't just put in their own neighborhood septic systems, but I guess you just gave the answer to that, Ken, the appeals. But we did the Coonamessett. I've seen the Coonamessett go from, I guess everyone on this panel has seen the Coonamessett go from Cranberry Bog to Living River with trout far upstream, and it would be a real shame to hinder their propagation with by doing something that's actually the right idea, but it's the wrong place, I think, right now. I'm glad to hear that the Waquoit chips are still working strong. It suggests that maybe Perch Pond could be not sewered, perhaps, if we used some of your technologies. Yeah, thanks for the idea, though.
Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was really happy to go first tonight before I heard the opposing point of view. And I feel like I got blindsided on this one. I agree with Maury. I didn't realize there was a difference of opinion about this. It sounded like something that would address some of the issues that we're trying to address in denighting our ponds. Okay. I still think it sounds like it makes sense. Maybe Marge's right. Maybe there's another location. Come over Bourne Pond. We can use some help.
All right. We're going to see if anybody has anything else they want to add. Just please, only new information. Betsy?
Yeah, so I want to clarify something, a word that Ken used and I used, but I think might be a little unclear. I suspect when Ken's talking about the river, he's talking about the river channel that has been made 50% longer. But the river itself is the entire floodplain. And I'm particularly concerned as far as trout habitat to what happens right at the seeps by the edge and those channels that were dug. Those channels were specifically dug for trout habitat. And wherever you place it along there, Ken, it's going to affect those channels. And I have been staying with this project all these years. I've told Steve Hurley that one of my main goals is to see sea-run brook trout restored to that river. And it certainly looks like we're about to get to that point, since they're actually even reproducing in the lower river. And I really don't want to impact that habitat. And the other thing I want to point out is there are two places that you mentioned with permeable reactive barriers. You mentioned your Wacoit project, and you mentioned, or at least Kristen maybe mentioned, the project that is done on the Coonamessett, but south of Route 28. I want to point out that both those areas are tidally influenced. So any impact of removing nitrogen from the water will be minimized by fresh water coming in. In this case, in these seeps, if you remove the nitrogen, you're gonna deoxygenate these sites that were specifically designed for trout habitat.
Good?
Am I good?
Are you
Sure,
good?
I'm good.
Well, I don't want to cut you off. Courtney?
Yeah, having listened to the discussion, I think the concept is obviously a valid one and needs to be, we need to find out over a long period of work, over a long period of time, how effective it is. But I agree with my fellow commissioners that this may not be the best location for this. There are two parts to this. One is, and you mentioned that, I think, Ken, that that you've got them working that have been in the ground for 17 or more years, and they're still functioning as they were when they were originally installed. But at one point, there's going to be a shelf life to them. And does that mean they have to be dug up and rebuilt at great expense? Or is there a way to design these things so you can put the things in the ground and replace the wood chips as at will as needed? That's one question. And that involves an intriguing design concept. The second thing is that I think there are plenty of areas in Falmouth where the efficacy of this particular concept could be demonstrated. Ken, you live right nearby me, and Little Sippawisset Marsh is loaded with a lot of excess nitrogen. And if there was one of those things installed somewhere in Little Sippawisset Marsh, I think you'd get a lot of data that would prove the point.
Well, that's an interesting example that I think goes to kind of what we're concerned about with this development. So when they put in, the auto camp, and they put
Yeah.
in supposedly an on-site system that was going to get rid of all of the nutrients, and of course it didn't work that well, and there probably is some kind of a plume coming from that specific development that, if we could locate a PRB down gradient from it, it would be really helpful. That's exactly the concern I have with this proposed 300 to 900 unit, 40B. And my thinking was, and I think Kristen's thinking was, let's be prepared for that. Let's get some preliminary data on what direction the groundwater's flowing, whether a PRB like this might work to intercept that plume, and be prepared, because as was pointed out, it takes a couple of years to do this work and get the answer, so that when and if this thing is approved, we can go to them and say, look, we have evidence that if you put in a PRB here, XYZ location, you could have some remediation of the impacts. Because again, talking to Amy, it sounds like she does not want that water moved to West Falmouth.
I can think of an area right in Little Sippowisset Marsh that almost is ideal, because it's all the groundwater that flows from wherever, all up in that moraine, comes out into Little Sippowisset Marsh, and it flows very freely, and it would be a wonderful location for something like that.
Yeah, but it's what's pressuring this is the regulatory issues with the TMDLs and the state coming in and saying, you guys have to do something. So that's what's driving it all. And I don't think we have that same driver in Little Sippowisset. It is a pretty well flushed system.
All right.
As those of us who floated down the creek out into the sound know.
No,
Kevin?
you're right. I'm just saying that to prove the point about how efficient it is, you could pick a different area.
Yeah, I don't think we want to prove the point about the efficiency. I think we know that. I think what we want to do is what it's turning out to be the case from the many of these studies that are starting to accumulate is the conditions differ from site to site. And you got to have some site specificity in terms of direction of groundwater flow, depth you need to go to, and so forth, to get to the point where you can propose a real remediation.
All right. Thank you. Kevin?
I am grateful for the discussion. It was a lot more complicated than I thought it was going to be, but the time frame and everything else involved tells me that I'm afraid it's not going to be very good for your grant. Thank you.
Maury?
Again, I'm going to reiterate, the project should be considered on the 40B property, not on the Coonamessett. And I think Ken's looking for an endorsement from this board, and I'd like to make a motion not to endorse this project on the Coonamessett.
Okay. All right. Let's get through a couple more comments first, if you don't mind.
Yep.
But just to clarify on that point, that's part of the problem is that, I think I'm going to go out and say, I'd speak for everybody here that we'd endorse this type of project. It's the location that has a lot of trepidation, and even an application, even if we were going to consider the site officially, it needs a whole notice application. So that's a whole nother thing. But again, I just want to let everybody comment completely. This has gone on for a little while, so let's see if we can move along. Melissa, do you have anything to add? Okay. I didn't mean to imply you guys can't speak. Steve? Actually, Steve, you got 3 chances. You get the bonus points tonight.
I'll pass
All
on third.
All right, Ms. Bergeron.
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Jen? Okay. So again, just, this is procedurally now, they're asking us for an endorsement and it's site specific. So in my opinion, that's kind of the hang up here. So, Maureen, if you want to make your motion again, if you don't mind, make it official. So again, what they're asking us is to endorse the project specific to Coonamessett. So we kind of want a positive motion, if that makes sense. Does that make sense or not, Jen?
Yeah, so you always put a positive motion on the
Yeah.
table and then vote accordingly. I mean,
Okay.
according to, yeah, then you take your vote. Sorry.
I make a motion to accept endorsing the project on the Coonamessett for the reactive barrier. Carla Hawks.
Thank you.
Bird, second.
All right. So again, the motion and the second on the table is to endorse this project specific to the Coonamessett. Is there anything else anybody wants to add? All right. Jen, should I ask, is there anything in the public chat function? I know this isn't a hearing, but
There's nothing in the public chat, Mr. Chairman.
all right. So is everybody clear on what the motion and the second are? All right, I don't see anything negative. So we're going to take a vote. Again, this is to endorse the project with the Coonamessett as a specific site. Betsy?
Gladfelter, no.
Courtney?
Bird, no.
Matthews, no. Kevin?
O'Brien, no.
Maury?
Carla Hawks, no.
Steve?
No.
All right. It's unanimous. We have
Melissa,
declined.
You forgot
Melissa.
Melissa.
Got Melissa.
Did I skip you?
Yes, you
Wow,
did.
I'm so
It's okay.
sorry,
I'm just so quiet.
Melissa.
It's okay. Sorry, folks, but no. But I like the concept.
Well, thank you all
Yeah,
for the
and if I may,
consideration.
Ken,
And
before I would just like to say that, and many of us are against this type of project. It's the specific site. And I know you've heard that 37 times, but I just want to be clear. The other thing is, for something like this, I mean, I would recommend to you that you have some form of a workshop and include us, because, you know, all this could have been metered out. I'm not saying we'd all would have agreed with it, but, you know, just to make the process a little simpler. I know you're under the gun with the deadline and everything, but, you know, we're just seeing this for the first time. So
Well, let me add, we
That
haven't
makes
had a
it
lot of time to
difficult
think
for
about
us.
it either. You know, that the SNEP call came out and Kristen and I said, hey, maybe we should try this. But I think you're right. I think if we tried to work together, maybe include Chris to get his, you know, buy-in and advice, we could come up with a plan maybe that everyone could agree to.
I agree. So maybe we'll see you in the not too distant future.
Jamie?
Yes.
So I happened to listen to the last 2 water quality, or the last 3 water quality meetings. And apparently you're preparing is this correct? A bylaw to require IA systems on the Buzzards Bay side? Am I correct?
So
Something like,
there was a proposal by John Waterbury to potentially have a 300-foot boundary on some of the Buzzards Bay watersheds. But that was put on hold because of the lack of general use approval systems. And then with the state regs that came out, all of that was put on the back burner.
okay, but I might suggest, since this is a critical watershed where you're not planning the sewer on the other side of 28, on the north of 28, you might consider, you know, something like, if you sell your house, you have to have a new Title V system, right? If you're,
And those were all part of the criteria for the Buzzards Bay side. And whether that gets expanded townwide, some of it is how the state regs may or may not come through.
Okay, but I'm just suggesting, this is, I realize that you have a problem, that we all in the town have a problem. But
All
I'm
right,
not sure this is the best solution at this, well, not am I just not sure, it's going to destroy the habitat, the fish habitat.
all right.
That's all, Jamie.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you guys for your time and your service.
The same to you, Ken. You've been on boards for a long time.
Yeah. Have a good night.
Night.
Thank you. All right, Melissa, just for the record, I had you X'd out because you weren't at the beginning of it. That's why I skipped you. It wasn't intentional. Don't take it personal.
It's okay, Jamie, not taken personally. I just linked in at 10 after.
No, it's fine. All right, next up, a request for continuance under a notice of intent. First up is Michael and Mary Azaro, 0 Charles Lane, map and parcel ID 25-02-025-004A, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a single-family dwelling with a deck, porch, and patio to install a Title V sewage disposal system and to install restoration plantings. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until April 5th.
So move, Gladfelter.
Carla Hawk, second.
I'm sorry, what was the date? April?
April 5th.
Thank you.
Let me just make sure that it is that Wednesday. Yes, it is.
All right. We have a motion and a second to continue this until April 5th. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carla Hawk's aye.
Melissa?
Right, guy.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until April 5th. Next up, Christopher King, JDM Investment Group LLC, 0 Low Way, Lot 4, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a single-family dwelling with attached garage, install a Title V sewage disposal system, and to install a pool and pickleball court. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until March 29th.
So move, Gladfelter.
Carla
Bird,
Hawk, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until March 29th. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carla Hawk's aye.
Melissa?
Right, guy.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until March 29th. Next up is a request for a continuance under an enforcement order. Susan and Gerald Lieber, 101 Lakeshore Drive, 16 Lakeshore Drive North, and 0 Lakeshore Drive North. Map and parcel number 22-04-027-004A. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this, they're requesting a continuance until March 29th. The reason being, they'd like the board's input on how to restore this area, and we had requested hard copy plans for you all, and they just didn't arrive. So it's I don't know what happened on their end, but it's a simple mistake. So we asked them to continue it to the 29th so the board could get the plan, so you wouldn't be trying to make a decision with just seeing the plan that night.
Fair enough.
So moved,
Bird, second.
Gladfelter.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until March 29th. Betsy?
Melissa has a question.
I'm sorry, I was looking down.
Yeah. It's okay. Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. These people have moved things forward several times on us already. May I ask through the chair, Jen, these plans, I mean, they want our input. I assume they already have suggested plans, or are we just going to come up with?
I don't believe they have
Anything.
suggested plans right now. What they have on the plans is all of the alterations that were done on site, so you can see what happened to the site on plan. I mean, it's basically an existing conditions plan, so you can all see where the buffer zones are and what the different alterations to this site has been. If you haven't been to this site, Melissa,
I've been there.
Yeah, it's been heavily altered.
Yeah,
and
so
we needed everything on a plan. So they finally got that together, and they want to engage with the board on what you would like to see for restoration.
don't people normally hire landscape architects for this kind of stuff? Or
They have an engineering firm
They have
right
an
now
engineer,
that they're
yes.
working with.
Mhm. Wow, this is just to the next meeting?
To the next meeting.
This is my last time. Okay, thanks.
Okay, that's fine. We just didn't want the board to get, caught off guard or felt pressured to make decisions with seeing an existing condition plan for the first time. So that was my call. I asked them to continue it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane.
Ms. Bergeron,
Just to add, they do have a direction for 101 Lakeshore Drive on how they'd like to proceed. They are looking for input in regards to the undeveloped parcel. I can't recall each plan. I think they're both existing conditions, but they are mostly looking for your input on the undeveloped one. So they have.
so they're just trying to gauge what expectations there are, basically. Okay, fair enough. All right, anything else? All right, so we have a motion and a second on the table to continue this till March 29th. Betsy?
Gladfelter, Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carla Hawks, aye.
Melissa?
Right, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until March 29th. Next up, request for determination of applicability. Nancy Canwisher, 0 Penzance Road, map and parcel ID 52-01-001-000. Toll Mass for permission to replace 2 pilings in kind on an existing boathouse. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
O'Brien, second.
Thank you.
You're
All right,
muted.
we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye. Thanks, Maury.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carla Hawks, aye.
Melissa?
Right, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Maury, you weren't supposed to tell her. All right, next up, Town of Falmouth, Woodneck Beach, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to install fencing and to plant beach grass. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Gladfelter, second.
We have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carla Hawks, aye.
Melissa?
Right, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I. But I'm never more confused about boundaries not confirmed by this RDA. It's a beach.
In dunes.
Oh my. All right, next up are Requests for a hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. As a reminder, public commenting is limited to 3 minutes, so I encourage you to stay within the purview of this board, which are the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw and how they pertain to a particular application. The chair reserves the right to stop any commenting that is disparaging or inconsequential to the hearing. First up, first one's been previously continued. Next up, Janice R. Eidenberg, 33 North Bournes Pond Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct a one-story addition, enlarge the existing patio, and install mitigation plantings. Jen?
Sorry, there was a siren going by. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have promoted Sam. I am going to butcher your name and I apologize, Emil, from JC Engineering to present his project. My apologies on the name, Sam.
No problem. Yes, Sam Iameli with JC Engineering. So I'll give you a brief description. The project here is at 33 North Bournes Pond Road. This involves the construction of a single-story addition and a small patio extension. The work will take place within the buffer zone of a salt marsh and a coastal bank. The entire scope of work will be within Zone A, which will require a 3-to-1 planting mitigation. We have determined that 383 square feet of area will be altered, resulting in approximately 1,149 square feet of plantings.
Excuse me, Sam, do you have a plan you can put up for the board?
I did submit a plan digitally as well. I'm sorry, I'm unable to share my screen.
Okay, that's okay, Mr. Chairman. Sam, you can go on, Mr. Chairman. Give me a moment and I will pull that plan up for you, Sam.
Sure.
Just give me one moment here. These are finished. I'm going as fast as I can, Mr. Chairman.
No pressure. Can you work on that?
I'm almost there. Almost there. North Bournes Pond. This middle. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to share my screen for JC Engineering. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. Continue, Sam. Sorry about that.
All right, no problem. So as you can see on the plan, the magenta box highlighted on the northern side of the structure will be the addition. And just adjacent to that, to the west, we have outlined in red the small patio extension. And then outlining the backyard, we have the area designated for mitigation plantings. And then in addition to that, we will also be providing erosion control around the limit of work. And I would be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Sam.
Yep.
All right, Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just to keep this plan up for a second, one of the things that the conservation agents noticed when they went on site was this patio appeared, okay, I'll stop sharing, appeared between 2018 and 19 with no permits. That area is moving closer to the salt marsh than the present primary structure, so that patio will actually need to be removed in accordance with your regulations. Sam, I'm not loving the common juniper. If you have it in that corner, it's fairly shaded. So we can condition some other plants for you to choose from in the, where the common juniper is going to go.
That's not a problem.
Okay. We like to give, homeowners kind of a rough idea of what we're looking for plants. So the staff report stated about 137 plants will be required to fill in that area. We use a plant calculator, you use Google plant calculator, and that's where we get the square footage. We put in the spacing requirements that we require, square footage. It gives us a number. So that's where that number came from.
Okay.
There was some concern from the agents on the trees being removed for construction. I think it was on the north side of the property, kind of where, I'm circling it and you can't really see. So I will share my screen again, Mr. Chairman, real quick. Alyssa, it was this area of the property, correct?
Yes.
You were concerned with?
Yeah, there are more trees on the property in jurisdiction than are drawn on the plan. No trees were mentioned as being proposed for removal, but I'm hard pressed to think that one tree by the corner will likely have to go, considering its overhang and diameter. I'm just wondering if any trees for construction access as you move east on your screen, if any of those will need to be removed as well.
We're only anticipating that one tree that you were pointing out just north of the addition to be removed.
But what about your construction access? Is you coming in this way or?
Yes, we'd be coming in off the edge of the driveway and through that fenced in gate there.
So I think what we would be looking for, Sam, is to have those trees in that area that I was just circling added to the plan. So that we know how many trees are out there. And then if they are removed during construction, we can condition them to be replanted.
Okay.
So I think we are going to need to see a revised plan with those trees on the plan. I think that's something we can condition.
Sure.
If we're going to move forward tonight, if the board doesn't have any additional questions. But that's going to be a requirement before we sign off on any building permit, is we'll need to see that revised plan with the trees.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And I think that was it. Oh, the only other thing my eagle eye agents noticed was their hang on one second. Got to share my screen again. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I think it was
Practicing, you got it.
What was that? It was in this area. Some of the trees on the bank have been historically heavily pruned or topped almost. And we would suggest adding, if this is where their view is, and this is where the trees look like they have been, again, historically topped or pruned. If we could establish maybe a vista corridor in that area, a 25-foot vista corridor in accordance with our regulations, so that your client can maintain some sort of vista in that area, knowing that in the town of Falmouth, pollarding of trees is just not allowed in the vista corridor.
Sure, yeah, we could definitely designate that area on the revised plan. That
Excellent. Thank you, and that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Ms. Bergeron.
Yeah, I think just one follow-up point on the Vista is if that is something that the applicant is interested in, I can send over our Vista prune regulations just for their knowledge. The area at the moment appears to meet the corridor, but going forward, if vegetation were to grow, we would need to know who their certified arborist would be that would maintain that corridor for the life of this permit. And then every 3 years, if they'd like, they can re-up the permit through an RDA.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments. We're going to start with Courtney.
No comments.
See how easy that was. Kevin.
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Maury.
No comments.
Melissa.
Okay, since no one's bringing it up, that tree at the corner of the proposed addition is a very large two-limbed oak. It's got a diameter of at least 20 inches. There's just no way that that's going to survive the construction. And so I would like to know, I'm going to ask Maury's question about caliper inches of trees that are going to be removed, and maybe we can see some replacement of that tree and in the form of some other trees, please, because that's a mother tree there. And then also there was another oak in the lawn on the plan. The 31.9, the 31 feet 9 inches line goes straight through it. That also has been heavily limbed. The whole half the tree has been taken off, not just the 4 smaller trees that are in the that are over the coastal bank that have been pruned. So I'm not pleased with that. But actually, so I'm glad that the patio, we've learned, is not permitted. I was wondering about those steps going down to the water. Do we know if those have a permit on them, or even the little dock that's sort of sitting on the ground just beyond the deck? If
I
may
believe
ask,
there's a filing regarding the walkway that was permitted. I don't have access to the records at the moment, but I do remember seeing something.
So when you say walkway, do you mean the stone
steps.
stairs,
Yes.
but maybe not the little wooden dock that's sort of reaching into the water?
I believe it was there, but I will double check for you.
If you could, please, because that's I know that becomes sensitive. But. And then I assume also that the brick walkway from the patio down to the steps, and it just sort of looks.
When I reviewed aerial photos, it's been there
Okay.
for as far back as I can see clearly.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'm just more concerned about those trees and then the external deckage, shall we say, that's going over the salt marsh. So if you could look into that, please, Alyssa, that would be nice. And also, I noticed that there's an irrigation system in the yard. The grass is awfully green. They shouldn't be fertilizing. Okay. You could
Make note of that.
Yeah, make a note of that, please. Thank you. That's it. And thank you for keeping that addition within the same distance that the corner of the house is from the wetlands.
Of course.
All right. Excuse me. Steve.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity.
Betsy.
No comments or questions.
Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make one more comment.
Yep.
Sam, please inform your client that the patio will need to be removed and that area restored before our department will sign off on a building permit for this addition. So I just want you to make them aware of that.
Sure.
And I do agree with Melissa and the assessment the agents made in the field. That oak's not going to make that addition. So that will need to be replaced. So we can either condition where that replacement will be, or you can continue and consult your clients and see where they would like it and see if you can get that, their preferred location permitted. If not, we will choose a location to add an additional oak to the property. And again, if any, we'll need a new plan showing the trees along that northern property line where that construction access is.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
All right, Maury.
I just wanted to add one thing after listening to Melissa, and it meets my eye, is that there is no caliper inches on the sides of the trees that are shown on the plan. And usually we require that so we do know how many caliper inches you're removing and what you might need to replace. Would be required to replace. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? All right, I'd entertain a motion.
So I'll make a motion, but let me just ask. So what Maury's asking is that we'll need a new plan that has the caliper inches on it, right? And can we condition that, Ben?
I mean, I can condition anything you'd like. It's whether or not the board's going to feel comfortable with that condition.
Well,
Because
the condition would be you have to put the plan, you have to put the caliper inches on all the trees.
Mhm.
That plan has to be submitted before you can apply for a building permit.
Correct. But if that oak in the corner of that patio is going down, do you want it replaced with one tree? Do you want to replace with two trees? Alyssa, is that a double trunk over there?
Yes,
I don't recall. There should be photos.
it is. Sorry, I
So
thought you said
can't-
Melissa.
Hold on, everyone. Put your hands down. I'll call you in a second. Are you all set, Jen?
Yeah, I'm just going to try to find a photo of that tree since I've got my computer all logged in.
All right.
So you can go on with the rest of the
Melissa?
questions.
I was just going to make a motion that we continue this until we see the plan with all the caliper inches and all the trees, because there are several trees missing from the plan as well.
Okay, so, the very start of this hearing, the discussion was made about these trees, so Jen, you were the one you said that, one of the trees on the plan and that you could condition it. So that implication was that we could move forward. So if things have changed, that's fine, but that discussion was made. The discussion about the tree coming down was made. Courtney?
Courtney, you're muted.
You're muted.
No questions.
I thought you had your hand up.
No. I'm scratching my ear.
All righty.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, we can condition whatever you want. I have the picture of the tree up if the board would like for me to share my screen. I know you love when I share my screen. So here is that tree, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, this is your addition?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So how is this tree, how is the comment, there's no proposal to remove any trees? How are you going to construct your addition with this tree here?
Sorry, I had mentioned removing that tree.
Oh, you did? Okay, I'm sorry. It wasn't on the plan, I think. That's why we were saying
Okay,
it
yeah.
wasn't X'd out on the plan. So
Gotcha.
that's why it was some confusion. So that one is going.
Mhm, correct. Yes, that
Rightfully.
one tree.
Yeah. So
Was it mitigated for though?
no, it was not, Betsy.
So on the trees, so there needs to be a note that there's a double trunk tree that's being removed. And Jen, you said staff wanted the rest of the trees documented.
Correct.
So now the question is, do we want to see that plan before we close the hearing?
That'll be up to the board, Mr. Chairman.
Then I'm going to make a motion to close this hearing and take it under advisement.
Pat, second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. And we would condition that the notes about the trees.
Correct. And the replacement, they'll have to mitigate for the removal of that double trunked oak.
Right,
Okay,
all right.
we can condition that.
Fair enough for you, Sam?
Yes, fair enough.
Okay.
All right, so again, the motion on the table and the second is to close the hearing. If there's nothing further, I know Courtney's scratching his forehead. I don't know what that means. Okay. All right, we're voting. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Melissa?
I said no,
Did you say no?
correct.
Steve?
Pat and I.
All right, with one negative. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, guys.
Ugh. All right, the next hearing had been previously continued, brings us to Matthew Waldrop, Instar Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy, intersection of Surf Drive and Shore Street, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to install a buried submarine cable across Vineyard Sound. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have promoted Dwight Dunk with Epsilon and Matthew Waldrop with Eversource to present their project. Hi, Dwight. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Jennifer?
I am excellent. Am I promoting Nicole up as well?
Yes, just in case for a Q&A
Okay,
session.
perfect. And I am Nicole Perlow. I'm bad with names from Epsilon is also being promoted up. Okay. I think I have everybody in, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Dr. Dunk, you're up, sir.
Great. Jennifer, do you mind if I share my screen? Here we go.
As long as I don't have to, Dwight, we're good.
Okay. There we go. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Dwight Dunk, a principal with Epsilon Associates. Matt Waldrop with Eversource is also joining us. He's the lead for the environmental group at Eversource, and Nicole Perlott from Epsilon is also attending. Just before I get into the meat of the presentation, Jennifer, I just want to confirm that the Commission did receive the file number from DEP. We got it as DEP file number 0254840.
Yes.
Okay, and we also submitted the proof of a butter notification and green cards this afternoon.
Received that as well. Thank you.
Okay, great. The green cards that we've received to date.
Understandable.
Great, thank you. You just want to take care of those administrative pieces. Great. This project is the submarine cable portion of the Martha's Vineyard Reliability Project. We were previously before the Commission and received an order of conditions for the landside cable route from the substation down to Surf Drive. This is now the submarine cable portion from the Surf Drive parking lot to Oak Bluffs. And there we go. And so this, our notice of intent here focuses on the section of the corridor within the Falmouth waters. We have submitted notices of intent to Tisbury and Oak Bluffs for the remainder of the cable portion. So in Falmouth waters, there's approximately just shy of a 2.5 mile cable to be installed. 0.41 miles, which is approximately 2,150 feet, will be installed using horizontal directional drill that will occur from the Surf Drive parking lot, and it will extend beyond a couple of hundred feet beyond the edge of the eelgrass that's offshore here. And that's being proposed to avoid altering beach, dune, and eelgrass. The other, just over 2 miles will be installed using a jet plow or a hydro plow, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that too is a measure to minimize impacts to the sea floor. There's also, when this is done, there will be 2 transition manholes in the Surf Drive beach parking lot and about 135 feet of duct that connects one transition manhole to the next, and then that goes out to the existing duct system in Surf Drive. So these images here, this is the green here is the eelgrass that's mapped by DEP. Our marine survey, CR Environmental out of Falmouth, did video surveys, and the survey at the time of that was done in the fall of 2021 was is actually a little further landward, but we're designing it to stay outboard of the DEP mapped eelgrass limit. And the project need, just to put this in perspective, the Martha's Vineyard is currently served with 4 cables. The 99 cable extends from the easterly edge of the Surf Drive parking lot over to Eastville Ave in Oak Bluffs. That's this green alignment here. And that's a direct lay cable, meaning it's just was the first 1,000 feet or so was trenched, and then the rest is just laid on the sea floor. Then there's the 75 cable that was installed about 10 years ago. That extends from the Mill Road parking lot over to Tisbury. And that's a buried cable. It's being, this project is being built in the same manner as that project was built. And then there are 2 cables that extend from Elm Road and Surf Drive, the 91 and the 97 cables, and those also go over to Tisbury. But those 4 cables don't presently meet the peak demand on the island. And the island is, so therefore the Eversource has a contract with 5 diesel generators that are used to provide peak power. But even in current day peak, those are not enough, and they often have to bring over temporary diesel generators to meet peak demand. The island is also looking to promote greater electrification on the island, increase the penetration of EVs, electrical vehicles, and also to promote distributed renewable power, such as, residential rooftop solar, things like that. So changes to that system are also needed. So this 5th cable will provide the existing peak and the future demand loads on the island, allow those 5 generators to be decommissioned, which is great for air emissions and greenhouse gas emissions, and will also allow the island to better integrate renewable energy on the island. So we've talked about a couple of these bullet points here, and then in Falmouth, as part of the project that was discussed with the Landsguide cable, the Shining Sea Bikeway will be widened, and the 15 utility poles on Palmer Ave are being relocated to improve the clearance on the sidewalk. In this area for the project, the resource areas and why we're here that are subject to the Wetlands Protection Act and the bylaw, land under ocean and land containing shellfish, those are coincident with each other. Land subject to tidal action. We have the 100-year floodplain that extends across this area, so that we have land subject to coastal storm flowage. And then just seaward of the parking lot, we do have coastal beach, and there are some areas of dune along the parking lot edge. Although not a wetland resource area, but an interest that's protected by the Act and the bylaw, are regulated by the Act and the bylaw regulations, is estimated habitat. There is estimated habitat. It's mapped out in the Sound, and it's for piping plover and state listed terns. Basically, that's the foraging habitat. According to the mapping, there isn't nesting identified on the beaches here, but there is the foraging habitat. So the HDD is located in the paved parking lot, so we're avoiding any work on the beach. And we'll also working with Natural Heritage to meet any time of year restrictions to avoid any inadvertent takes. And likewise, the hydroplow construction would also meet any time of year restrictions. And this is just a map of the 100-year flood. We have the B zone in the harbor, a B zone that extends across Surf Drive, and then it gets into an A zone. So we do have work within the 100-year floodplain is mapped here. This graphic is a little bit easier to read than the engineering plans. So I wanted to show this. This is showing the overall alignment of the proposed cable. This is where the driving pit or entry pit would be for the HDD setup. Once work is done, this is the approximate locations of the manholes, and it's showing the duct between the two manholes, and then the duct extending over to the existing electrical duct in Surf Drive. So as we can see, we have work within the buffer zone to beach and dune, as well as floodplain. Just a brief description. You may have had presentations on HDD before and jet plow before. I'll try to keep this very brief, but horizontal directional drill, basically a small pit is excavated. That was the location of the star on the previous image. It's about 10 by 10, can be up to 10 by 20. The plans here show it being 10 by 10. It's usually about 5 feet deep or so. That's where the drill enters. And what happens first is the drill is a small diameter drill. The technology is very interesting and intriguing, and I'm not an expert in that technology. I've learned quite a bit working with the experts, but basically they are able to guide the drill head, the cutter head, and follow along the designed arc, and it exits out at the sea floor. There are a couple of different techniques. One is where the first drill punches out or exits, and in that case, the about the 7-inch diameter guide pipe remains, and that can go up onto the barge, or the drill can end and stop just before breakout, and then it's pulled back. But in either case, after the initial pilot hole is drilled, that cutter is pulled back along that same path. It's taken out, it's put a larger cutter head on called a reamer, and it's reamed out to a larger diameter. And typically then, after that first pass, none of the reamers will break out, and they go back and forth with larger reamers until the desired diameter hole is achieved. This is going to require a case, and then they install a casing. So what happens is they have the final reamer break out, and typically what's done is before it breaks out, they would put in a device, either a gravity cell, which is usually like a 20 by 20 box. Think of a trench box that you see in the road for trenching in roads that are usually only like 6 feet wide, but maybe 20 feet long. This becomes a large one, like 20 by 20, so that it would sit on the sea floor. The punch out would happen within that gravity cell. So if there are any fluids that are discharged, the fluids are water and bentonite clay, and a natural substance that is more dense than seawater, so it does settle out quickly. So the purpose there is basically to have a little sump there that's created by this gravity cell, so anything gets collected there. And then what happens is that last reamer, they pull that up onto the barge, they attach the casing, which in this case is a HDPE, high density polyethylene casing, like I said, with about a 12-inch inside diameter. So depending on the manufacturer, that can be 16 to 18-inch exterior diameter. That casing is then pulled from the seawards end back to the land. And then once that's installed, the barge with the cable will come, will approach the exit hole area. The cable will then be pulled through the casing from the barge to the land, secured. And then what happens is the cable is installed onto a jet plow. The jet plow is lowered into place, and it begins to, the barge begins to move, be kedged forward, pulling the jet plow along the sea floor. And what the jet plow is, we call this the stinger, or, this is the plow. It has water jet nozzles on the front, some on the side, and that fluidizes the sediment within a trench that's 3 to 5 feet wide. And that width depends on the pressure as well as the substrate through which it's going. And the size of the stinger is sized so that for this project, it's to be 6 to 10 feet below grade, below the sea floor. It does have it is articulated here. So if it were to hit something hard, it would rise up and then come down again to where it can be deeper. So this is not a fixed blade, but it is articulated. And as the plow moves forward, those fluidized materials settle back into place. The cable is going to be about a 5.5 inch diameter cable. It's about 35 to 45 pounds per foot, depending on the manufacturer. So it's very dense and heavy, sinks to the bottom. The sediment settles over the top. So those are the two methods. At this junction here, you often have divers. You typically have to have divers use what are called our hand jets. And they use that to make that buried section at the transition from the jet plow in the HDD. This is from the engineering drawings that are submitted with the notice of intent. This is just showing the manholes, and this is showing the designed HDD arc from the pit, and out here about 400 feet from where the entry is, it's about 50 feet below the seabed. So it's quite deep, and even on the beach sections, it's a good 10 to 20 feet deep below the beach. I'm going to talk about this side first. This is where then the entry, the exit pit. There would be, like I said, there'd be a gravity cell. Sometimes they can use turbidity curtains, silk curtains. Either way, the idea is to have something to contain any drilling fluids that might be released during the exit of the drill. And then it's going to continue south across the sound, 6 to 10 feet deep, depending on the materials. And this, I'm going to try, if you don't mind, I'm just going to, this is the equipment layout for the project. As I said, in terms of proposed conditions, all that's going to be left visible is the manhole covers. Everything will be below grade. But the issue for this type of a project, I think, is really the construction. And so I just wanted to show, this is from sheet 10 in your set. This is blown up a little bit more, and this is showing the 10 by 10 pit. This is the entry location and the drill heading towards the vineyard. You have the drill rig set up here. You have drill pipe because it gets added to the drill as it goes on, and it's usually 20-foot sections. In the pit is the drilling fluids, and they don't have wonderful names here, but the pump is used to it recirculates those fluids, filters out the sand and things like that that are pulled back into the pit during the drilling operation. The sand is removed and the fluid is reused. The fluid helps to cool the drill and provide and reduce the friction as the drill moves forward. And then there is room for generators, and they call it cutting bins. That's the sand and stuff that would be pulled out of the hole, and that will be dewatered, and then it will be removed off site. And then there's areas for trailers and other materials and equipment that's needed during the drilling operation. Just going to minimize that one and go back to the slide. As I said, the use of these two construction techniques, essentially trenchless construction, are the primary mitigation measures because it avoids the beach, the dune, the eelgrass, and the intertidal resources. And the jet plow or hydroplow, it minimizes the alteration of the seafloor. What's typically left is a furrow about 3 to 5 feet wide, again, depending on the material. We presented in the notice of intent the marine survey report that shows the material here is very sandy, it's coarse grained sand and cobbles and gravel. So we don't expect a lot of turbidity during the jet plow, and we don't expect a loss of a lot of material, but you do get a little shallow furrow along the center line. And the skids, the jet plow follows along the skids. You can think of them as like snow skis that are about 1 foot wide on either side, and that's what it slides along the seafloor as it's pulled by the dredge. That can sometimes leave some shallow furrows, but those are the temporary alterations that we see. By way of case study, that 75 cable that was installed about 10 years ago, when the post-construction surveys were conducted, about 6 weeks after the construction ended, they already saw the furrows, actually being smoothed out because of the currents and the movements in the sound, and they started to see, recovery of that seafloor with benthic organisms. So the recovery could be pretty quick, and so we'd expect this project to be similar to that case study. The alternative method would be a traditional kind of cut and cover, where we'd excavate, dredge out a trench, lay in either side cast material or bring it up onto a barge, lay the cable, and then backfill, that would be a much more impactful construction technique. During construction at the HDD setup, stormwater controls will be installed, perimeter controls, any type of catch basin inlets protection for any catch basins that receive water from the work area, in basically housekeeping measures to keep the area free of sediment during construction to avoid stormwater runoff. The Section 5, we talk about the compliance with the wetland protection regulations as well as the Falmouth wetland regulations. We did file this as a limited project, which would allow the project to have somewhat relaxed standards. However, in Section 5, we do run through all of the performance standards for land under the ocean, land containing shellfish, to demonstrate that we meet the performance standards, even though it is a limited project. Land subject to coastal storm flowage. In the wetland protection regulations, there are no regulations. The bylaw regulations, I think you do, if I recall correctly. But the work is designed, once the work is done, the pit, that's where the first transition manhole will be. So the second transmission manhole goes in the trenching. The parking lot will be restored to existing grades, repaved to match existing paved conditions, so that we have no change in topography or elevation or surface type within the 100-year floodplain. That results in no change in the horizontal or vertical extent of flooding, no redirection of flood flows or change of velocities. So, with that standard, we are protecting the interest of storm damage prevention and flood control, as will have no change to that resource area post-construction. And the work in the buffer zone to beach and dune is that same work within land subject to coastal storm flowage, and therefore we won't have any impact to the dune or the beach by avoiding that And as you are familiar, you have that timber seawall, I call it seawall, but that timber wall along the edge of the parking lot, along much of that parking lot area, work area. And, you know, so we just wanted to keep this brief. I know it's a big NOI, so I'd like to leave it open for questions and answers. But as I mentioned, it's the work in the resource areas is temporary. The repositioning of sediment, if any of you read through the MEPA EIR, repositioning of sediment is considered dredging by DEP, so we are needing to get water quality certification for dredging and a dredge permit with Chapter 91. And the LSCSF will be restored to pre-construction conditions. And again, the buffer zone work is the same as that in LSCSF. And whereas the project meets the performance standards of the Mass Wetland Protection Regulations and the Falmouth Wetland Regulations, we do respectfully request an order of conditions to allow this project to move forward. And with that, that's the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions that you all have.
Thank you, sir. Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Do you have your MESA certificate yet?
No, we don't. We,
Okay.
you know, I think we will have to continue this. MESA has, they issued this as this project is one MESA number. It covers Falmouth, Tisbury, and Oak Bluffs.
Okay.
Though Oak Bluffs notice of intent and Falmouth notice of intent were submitted at the same time because their hearing was supposed to be this Thursday of this week. Yeah, tomorrow. But they canceled that hearing. Tisbury was not having, they weren't able to accommodate us on the hearing that is around this week. So we are on the hearing agendas for Tisbury and Oak Bluffs the first week of April.
Okay, and the reason, yeah, because we received the letter, we received the letter that went to the Secretary of EOEA that they weren't going to be officially commenting until the whole thing was done. But
Right.
to anticipate that time of year restriction between April and August for the plovers.
Yes.
So we will probably most likely write that into our order of conditions since it's the rare species is protected under our bylaw as well. Did you receive Division of Marine Fisheries comments? I didn't see any coming into our office.
Again, we haven't. I believe that DMF and Natural Heritage are kind of consolidating all three orders of conditions to write one comment letter that would be germane to all three towns.
Okay, and Division of Marine Fishery comments are going to be probably more to the offshore impacts and would be covered under any MEPA certificate.
Correct. And we have completed MEPA. We have a final certificate on the EIR that said no further MEPA review required.
Okay, so Division of Marine Fisheries didn't offer any recommendations or time of year restrictions in that?
Just let me check something.
Because I'm assuming they would give the same recommendations to the towns.
Correct. Let me just check something here in the notice of intent, which I do have opened. Oh, I thought I had it opened.
I know there were the letters in the notice of intent application, so I can look at that.
That's what I was going to look at.
Okay, that's fine. We can take a look at that. And if DMF has any time and year restrictions, we can write it into our order of conditions. I have a question. You said that the cable is not going to be lying on the top of the seafloor at any point. It's going to be buried, correct?
Correct.
So what about the mitigating measures or the protection measures that were written into the notice, like the gabions and the sand blankets or anything else that would be used to protect a cable as if it was laying on the?
Correct. We provided that as a construction contingency.
Okay.
We don't expect, based on the marine surveys that were conducted, we don't expect there to be any areas certainly within the town of Falmouth that the cable will not be 6 feet or deeper.
Okay.
So we identified that as a construction contingency in the event that the cable hit a glacial erratic or something like that, and was exposed or less than 6 feet deep, then there would need to be some cable protection. For purposes of MEPA and CZM review pursuant to the ocean management plan, we essentially showed a design and described a design that over protected the cable of up to 30 feet wide and however the length would need to be.
Okay.
The 75 cable that was installed about 10 years ago, just a little halfway through the sound, it did hit something. It was it had to be like a glacial erratic because there's only a 15-foot section of cable that was exposed. And that was able to be protected with a measure that was only 10 feet wide and then, about 30 feet long.
Okay.
But we as I said, we wanted to make sure that if something like that happened during construction, we've identified those measures. There wouldn't be a notice of project change with MEPA. And in terms of orders of conditions, Army
Basically
Corps
covering all your bases.
licenses, it's there.
Okay.
What it is.
No, I understand. And I'm assuming you have a license for the town or are going to obtain a license for from the town to perform this work on town property?
Yes, the Eversource is working with DPW for a grant of location.
Okay.
For the installation of the cable within town properties.
Okay. Is DPW did you go before the select board for the Mill Road one? I can't remember. Or did you just work with the DPW?
I did not work on the Mill Road project personally, but Eversource has been working very closely with DPW, obviously for the location of all the duct system within town property, roads, the Shining Sea bike path, this parking lot, and we'll be developing. I know it's outside wetlands issues, but transportation management plans.
Okay. The reason I ask is there is some wastewater infrastructure in that parking lot, and I want to make sure that obviously Eversource is aware of where that is located and that is not impacted at all. So it's good to know that you're working with the DPW.
Yes, and your wastewater superintendent also did ask for our geophysical data because of some work that's they're looking at down there. So there is interaction between Eversource and DPW.
Excellent. That's great to hear. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. It's not the first cable we've seen, but they're always really interesting to review.
Ms. Bergeron.
I have no comments. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments, Kevin.
No comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Maury?
I had a couple. And even though the bike path's not in our purview, will there be improvements along that? Because for root barriers or something? Maybe that would be something you can ask the DPW, because usually we like to have some kind of mitigation. Because you're going to widen it, am I correct?
Yes, that was covered under the previous notice of intent for which the order was issued. That did include the duct that was going down the Shining Sea bike path.
Okay. The cable that's going to be in the eelgrass, that was really fascinating, that how you're going to hydro plow it. So you're actually going underneath the eelgrass?
Yes.
Amazing. It's such a
Yeah,
change
there-
from years ago.
Pardon me?
It's such a huge change from back, in the 60s when they used to do it. So yes, I'm glad to see that. The frac tank, the weight of that on the edge of that parking lot, you're comfortable with it?
I would defer that to the engineers, that they would, I have typically seen, and we can confirm with engineers and the contractors, but I've typically seen contractors using timbers under those because they typically have point loads of the wheels. So by using, putting those on timbers, it spreads that load.
That's what I was just going to ask. Thank you. And then for sediment control in that area, what are you planning? Because it is a V zone.
I think what we would do in terms of work that's in the V zone, and what would make sense is, for normal conditions, i.e. not flooding, is using a perimeter control, straw bales or wattles, something like that. But I think a condition and what would make sense for the contractor would be if there's a predicted storm that's going to cause flooding in that area, that materials and equipment that would be damaged or could create flotsam and jetsam that if it's flooded out should be removed from the work area. Other types of equipment and materials that could withstand the flooding and not be carried away might be able to remain. But I think a condition where watching the weather, any predicted flooding, that the contractor remove those types of materials from the work zone so it doesn't get.
We just call it storm planning.
Yes.
We've seen where, the timbers that are, a lot of the equipment material that's being used, and you're going to probably be doing this during the winter.
Correct.
And that's usually when we get the serious storms. So it would be nice that you include a storm plan for that. And then I think, and obviously you're going to have a time of year restriction, which is basically the same time that the beach is open. So it won't be an impact for that as well.
Yeah, the intent is to be doing this work in the winter. It avoids the beach season. It also avoids the time of year restrictions, and so that's the intent.
It's a double win. Okay, thank you. It was a nice presentation.
Thank you.
And I just hope we get mitigation of some sort out of the use. Thank you.
All right. Melissa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to follow up on a couple of the things that Maury just mentioned. Early on in the presentation, thank you for the presentation. It was actually really fascinating just to see it again. You mentioned that the bikeway would be widened, and I believe you mentioned that we had another NOI for that.
It was an earlier NOI, Melissa, I think prior to you being on the board, that covered phase one that goes from the substation. Dwight, if you could it goes from, I think, the station over by the hospital, down the bike path by the Steamship Authority, and then comes down Mill Road and down Surf to this site. That's already been permitted.
Already done. Okay,
Yeah.
I was wondering when that was done. Okay, great. Then the only other question, I have two other questions. One, Mr. Dunk, you mentioned that this is a temporary project, temporary disruption. How many seasons or off seasons do you expect this project will last? Will it be 1 winter, 2 winters, 3? How long will we see multiple disruptions?
For the submarine cable, it would be 1 construction season.
Okay.
Yeah, the actual HDD itself is probably about a month or so worth of work, but there is time to mobilize and demobilize on either side of that. And that also presumes that there are no unexpected conditions during construction that are met. And then the jet plow itself moves about 250 to 300 feet a day. But that's once it's set up, and that's assuming a good, good weather and good sea state. So if they're, because typically once they start the jet plow, they just keep going 24/7. Unless there's, like I said, unless there's a storm or something like that, that they had to, put it on hold.
Okay, great. So basically one building season you're anticipating. Great, thank you. So then about the storm plan, storm preparation, somewhere in your book, it mentioned that you were going to use silt fences and or straw bales. Silt fences in that spot.
No, that's standard. That was just standard language. It would be more the straw bales or a wattle.
Or the wattles. Okay.
Because it's parking. It was just pavement.
Okay, yeah, and everything else would blow away anyhow, even on a good day. The only other thing is really not environmentally oriented, but it does have to do with the neighborhood. At the very, I guess it's the eastern end of the parking lot there. You've fenced off sort of where you've relegated sort of the eastern half of the parking lot to this project. At the very end, there are two benches there that I know the neighbors like to walk down and sit on. Do you think you could keep those available, or is it going to be it's right at the very end of the parking lot? If you can keep that for the neighborhood, that would be nice.
We can look at that with the engineers and the contractor. Obviously there's an element of safety.
Yes.
Because it is an active construction zone. So the question is, could those benches be accessed safely during construction? And I know it's going to be off season, and I live near a beach myself, and sometimes the winter time is a really fun time to go to the beach. So I get that people might want to be down there during that season. But we really have to think about the public safety too.
Yeah, I realize that. I just wanted to put that out there because they're right at the very tip of the parking lot. They're literally right next to the little bit of grass that's off the end of the parking lot. So if you could, it actually gets really narrow there too. You probably couldn't even fit any TUs in there. So other than that, I'm really glad to see that this dredge goes right underneath, and I hope the project works out well. It would be nice to at least have somebody have more renewable and sustainable energy in their neighborhood.
Well, I think, as Jennifer mentioned, Falmouth has seen these in the 75 cable that was installed about 10 years ago. These are the same construction techniques being used.
Yeah, so this will be cable number 5 in town. Maybe we'll have a few more in the future. Okay. Well, that's it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Steve.
No, thank you for the presentation. I thought it covered all of the questions I had, and appreciated everybody else's questions and comments and things I didn't think about, but I don't have any more.
Thank you. Betsy?
I've been around long enough to have seen these before, but I have no questions or comments. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you. Courtney?
Courtney, you're on mute.
I'll echo Betsy's comments. It's a thorough presentation. Glad it's not my job, but it's a nice project.
Thank you. All right, Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
Nothing in the public chat, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Then I'll make a motion to close this hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Mr. Waldrop, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think Dwight, you did a great job, and I want to thank the commission for I know we do a lot of work in town other than this project as well, and we appreciate the thorough review you give our projects and your diligence. I served in the commission myself as chair for a few years in Sandwich when I was living in Cape, so I appreciate the work you do, and Jennifer, you can reach out to us to directly to staff or to Epsilon if you need anything.
Yes.
We're looking forward to kicking off the project. I do think it's a good project that will service the community, Falmouth and Vineyard. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, if there's nothing else. All
Make a
right,
motion.
a motion.
Oh, I already did it. We're going to vote.
If you didn't keep interrupting me, we probably would. But
I'm ready. I'm ready,
All
Jamie.
yeah, right. So, as I was about to say, we have a motion and a second to close this hearing. And if there's nothing else. Oh, what a night. All right, we're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Melissa,
Red Tug Eye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing.
Thank
you,
you very
Dr.
much,
Bong.
Mr. Chairman and Commission members. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
All right, next. Next up, Rands Canal Association, Inc., 0 Rands Canal, North Falmouth, Mass., for permission to conduct maintenance dredging. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have promoted Mark Dibb from Cape and Islands Engineering to present his project. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, everybody. Mark Dibb with Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the Rands Canal Association for a maintenance dredge project. We filed a notice of intent for this project. If it's okay, I would like to share my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the project before you is a maintenance dredge of Rands Canal. I think you've seen this property or this area a few times in the past. There has been I think 3 or 4 order of conditions issued for Rands Canal. The project consists of a maintenance dredge. It's actually a half of the project, this portion of the project, which extends about 100 feet beyond an existing groin into Magansett Harbor. It's outlined by this gray dashed line and then proceeds into Rands Canal. Did have an existing maintenance dredge filed under 254337 that just expired recently in the last month or two. This portion of the project would be very similar to the approved project in the past, dredging to the same type of depths, 5 to 6 feet. We had this additional portion of the project, which also was dredged in the past under a different order of conditions, 2272, but did not have a maintenance, a current maintenance dredging approval for that. So we've submitted a notice of intent to essentially combine and be able to do a maintenance dredging for the areas outlined on the plans. Similar type construction methods would be used. We will be using both barge dredging that would be dewatered on a barge and brought off site via barge. And there's also areas on site that can handle from to dredge portions of the project from the coast. We've provided the dewatering area similar to the previously approved project. And again, the resource areas are land under ocean and land containing shellfish. We did receive some documentation from the Shellfish Constable that there are scallops in the area. An ongoing condition of the previous maintenance dredge, and we'd be again can have the same condition to relocate those the shellfish prior to commencing a new dredge. Again, multiple permits and permits and license have existed to do the dredging of this area, one in 87, 2008, and again in 2017. We're just continuing to work in those previously dredged areas. We believe the project does meet the performance standards and Falmouth wetland regulations, and that it's worthy of an order of conditions. We did, well, I'll let staff go into their report, and then I can follow up with a response to that and answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Jen?
Yes, Mark, we saw you responded to our staff report. You do have permission from the owner?
Correct. Yes, we provided
Excellent.
a letter from them.
Yes, thank you very much. And you added, I didn't see it on that plan you just put up, but did you add was the dewatering basin on the plan you just had up?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah, perfect. And then the only other thing that we have to add is obviously you received your letter from DMF, so you can anticipate a total time of year restriction in water activities from March 15th to June 30th. Oh, no, I'm sorry, January 15th to June 30th, excuse me.
Correct, yes.
Yes.
The previous maintenance dredge was a little bit different, but yes, we're okay with that.
Okay. Well, we like to follow DMF's recommendation.
Correct.
That winter flounder?
Winter flounder and just passage migration. Yeah. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Ms. Bergeron.
Just one additional comment on the DMF recommendations, Jen. For the other three, is that something we should put into the record and speak on?
The other three what?
Recommendations. The first was the time of year.
Time of year, yes. You have the top of dredge slope, maintain a buffer of 25 feet from any salt marsh. Top of slope no closer than mean low water line. Mark, can you confirm that your dredging footprint is no closer than 25 feet from that salt marsh area?
We have confirmed that, yes. It's
Okay.
shown on the plan, the setback.
Thank you.
The mean low water, we're doing the best we can, but I mean, there's a portion of the canal from mean low water to mean low water is only 50 feet wide, a little bit more than 50 feet wide. So it's impossible to
maintain that 25 foot.
Yes,
Okay.
but everywhere else we do maintain it the best possible we can.
Okay, can you put your plan up and show us that area, please?
Zoom in a little
It's
bit.
in
Just
that-
give me a second. Yeah, so
Yeah, it's right there.
these dotted lines, if you look from here, basically this arc right here. This is actually the same. This is the same dredged contours and things from the previous.
one.
Yeah, from the old one. So
Okay.
everywhere else we're providing as much as possible and is in excess of 25 feet.
And then we'll probably put a condition in about the silt curtains to protect the eelgrass, since you're gonna probably, do you know what time of year they're gonna be dredging this?
I don't know exactly, but it'll be within, that window.
I can't imagine it's gonna be in the middle of the summer, so it'll
Correct,
probably be in the fall. Okay,
Yes.
excellent, thank you.
I had no other comments. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner comments. Maury.
I think, Alyssa, I like your idea of putting the other records into the file from the other dredgings, just because it keeps it consistent all the way through. Where I think it was, you said DMF said that there were scallops there, so obviously there's eelgrass there, and you're going to, will there be any mitigation if eelgrass is ripped out?
We, I don't believe we didn't find any eelgrass. I don't believe there's any eelgrass in the footprint of the dredge.
Okay, because usually if there's scallops, there's eelgrass, so
Okay.
that's why I was just concerned.
It says the eelgrass beds are located offshore from the proposed dredge site, so they are offshore. And Marine Environmental Services did submit some comments. They wanted scallop mitigation. I did call Chuck to find out exactly what mitigation they were looking for. And he said he had a conversation with Cape and Islands, and that relocation of scallops under his direction is an appropriate mitigation in his opinion.
Okay, because in 2008, they did dredge up a lot of eelgrass and scallops and clams and cohogs. And they were all in the dewatering pile. So I just want to,
Okay.
If maybe we should put on it that maybe somebody has to be there when they're doing it.
Okay.
We actually used to put monitors on the barges. It was part of the requirement for dredging back in the day, so that they were the clerk of the works. They were in our best favor to make sure that the job was being done under the guise of the notice of intent. And this is a pretty tricky spot where they're so, especially in that tight channel, that it might just be a requirement. We might put that
Environmental monitor on site.
Yeah, I mean, we used to do that, but I don't know, we got lost in translation over the years.
I mean, if the board wants an environmental monitor, I can work with the DPW to get the name of an appropriate environmental monitor.
I don't know, it's just my thoughts. Anyway,
Okay.
that was the first one, so go from
Well,
there.
it's concerning to hear that they had brought out
I still have the
eelgrass
pictures
in 2008. I do have one question, Mark. What are you doing with the spoils? If you already said it, and I missed it. I was looking at something. I apologize.
So we don't have a specific contractor yet, but our preferred contractor is Robert Auer, and they intend to barge the spoils to New Bedford.
Okay.
And not replace directly on site, or plan to. And then if necessary, they would go to an appropriate site.
And where is this barge going to be located?
It would be the areas that they do by barge will be, in the canal as necessary.
Because when it was done in 2008, wasn't it done from the land?
Yes, and there are areas that could be done as from the land too. That's why we have the dewatering area, some notes regarding the access.
Yeah, so the barge could impact the eelgrass. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, again, we believe it's to the is it west, out in the water beyond the limit work. And we will have a silt boom around the areas we're working in, as it goes.
Okay. So ours going to be doing it from the water, from by barge. Whereas before, I believe it was Maury, wasn't it Good that did it from the land? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
But yes, we want, we intend to have both options available, with that dewatering area. And now we have the permission from the landowner. The dewatering is shown on site. Similar to the conditions in the 2017 maintenance order.
Okay. Barge and Bedford, got it. I see it. I'm just looking over your comments that you submitted this afternoon. Okay, thank you.
Lori, anything else?
No, I'll say.
Okay. Melissa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple of questions. One, I am a little concerned about the eelgrass. I mean, if Chuck has found scallops, like Maury said, there's eelgrass there. So I don't know why we're not mitigating for the eelgrass, or why we wouldn't suggest mitigating for the eelgrass that comes up. If we have a monitor, then we'll have a better idea as to what's going on. But actually, so a question, Mark. You mentioned the past permits, that it was done in 87 and 08 and 17 and now in 23. So there's a 20-year span between the first two that you mentioned, almost 10 years between the second two, and now we're working on 5 years. What's going on? Why are we doing this so soon as opposed to
I believe the 2017 maintenance dredging, I would have to confirm, but I believe it was not performed. And it has expired, but I could confirm that if necessary. But then it would be, a further span.
Since 08, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Jen, what do you know? Any ideas?
On this
2017 dredging, did it not happen? You guys are, you and Maury are talking about 08.
No, we were talking about 08.
Yeah. So
It wasn't performed.
we can check. I can't remember right off the top of my head, Melissa. But
I was just wondering if you remembered that off the top of your head. Yeah, it would be interesting to see what's up with that, if it happened or not. And the eelgrass scallop thing is a concern. And that's about it. Oh, I know what my questions were. Mark, here we go. In your nice big booklet that you gave us with all the samples and the lab samples and everything. I was going through it all, and we've got a bunch of semi-volatiles that showed up in a lot of your samples, but could you translate this for me, please? You've got on pages 79 through 88 of this packet. We've got metals, and we've got lots of heavy metals that are showing up here, including arsenic, cadmium, chromium, copper, lead, mercury, nickel, and zinc. In every single sample. Are those to be concerned about? I mean, when you go in and dredge, it's obviously going to be stirred up and go into the water and affect shellfish, fish, people. Move on to the next canal, into the harbor, etc.
Correct. Those can be a concern, and that is part of the reason for our initial assessment that it will be barged to New Bedford, and then most likely relocated, assuming it needs to be. It'll be relocated to an improved dredge facility. And I believe Robert Auer had a Wayne Kirker site in Yarmouth that it would then get disposed of there appropriately. I am not the person to describe those metals better to you, but there will be the appropriate actions to dispose of essentially dirty or contaminated materials versus replacing on the nearby beach. That is part of the reason for the removal offsite and to an appropriate disposal facility.
No, that's encouraging. What are the odds or what are the chances of this stuff actually contaminating further up the canal or out into McAnsett Harbor once you start stirring things up? I don't know, we're better off just leaving it there. It's not touching it.
Well, I believe it's better to remove it. It's sediment that, comes off boats, things like that. So removing it, I do believe is a better option than just leaving it there and removing of it appropriately.
And disposing of it appropriately.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Thank you. No more questions.
Steve?
Same application that was withdrawn and then resubmitted?
Just a couple weeks ago.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. There was some confusion whether we could amend the old one, whether it was expired due to COVID extensions, things like that. So yes, it is the same thing. It's just a full notice of intent instead of an amendment.
Okay, thank you. And you must have talked to staff in between those two times and worked everything out.
Yes.
So I have no other questions. Thank you.
Betsy?
Yeah, I'm a little bit unclear. I think it's great that you're taking it down to, or taking it off site, I should say, contaminated off site. There are two concerns, of course. We're moving it to New Bedford, which already is a Superfund site. But so I don't know what they do with it, but that's not my responsibility right now. Okay. And my other question is, what you're going to put on land and de-water, how is that going to get back onto the barge? You're just going to reach over and pluck it off the beach again?
Well, if the sampling, does show the contaminants, most likely the preferred method will be the barge method, and it will not even, the alternate method of using the land site just will not happen.
You won't use it.
So
Okay.
yes, the appropriate
Okay.
method based on the soils found will be used.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Yep.
All right.
That's all, Jamie.
All right. Courtney?
Just following up on Melissa and Betsy, I think when the time comes and you know where this is going and who's transporting it and all of that, I think you need to let us all know that that should be part of the conditions under which we issue you a permit.
Understood.
We need that all. It all needs to be documented.
Correct.
Other than that, I have no questions.
Sorry, we can provide a construction protocol or something similar to that. We don't even know 100% if it's Robert Hour, but yes, we can definitely provide staff the necessary information.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, standard condition would be that you guys meet with the contractor anyway, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so, okay. Kevin?
No additional questions. Thank you.
All right. And is there anything in the public chat function, please?
There is nothing in the public chat function, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? Mark, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
All right.
So I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement so Mark can go home.
All right. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. There's nothing further. All right. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carla Hawks, aye.
Melissa?
That's all, guy.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Dibb.
Thank you.
All right, next up, continued requests for hearing under notice of intent. Nordo Nissi III and Jane R. Nissi, 117 Little Neck Bars Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to conduct invasive species removal and restoration. And Ms. Bergeron, I believe I have the quorum as excluding Courtney, Melissa, and Maury. All right. Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have promoted Erica Norman of Merrill Engineering to present this continued project.
Excellent. Ms. Norman, you're up.
I'm Erica Norman from Merrill Engineering. I'm going to share my screen first. All right, so the proposed project is invasive species removal and restoration of approximately 12,800 square feet on the subject property. The areas will be replanted with native shrubs and 35 trees. The specific species are listed on the plan and in the narrative as well. So there's these 4 areas that will be replanted. This existing gravel drive is going to be relocated farther north away from the resource areas on the site. And then since last hearing, staff comments have been addressed in supplemental filing, and the current staff report came back with no comments. Do you guys have any comments at this time?
Excellent. All right.
Erica, can you stop sharing your screen, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Jen?
I have no comments at this time. The pretty much revised plan has addressed all of our concerns. The only thing we wanted to point out is that area that has been historically mowed. Erica, can you, sorry, I made you take your screen down. I'm gonna make you put it back up.
Yes.
Been doing this all night. Can you show them that area that's kind of historically been mowed? Yeah, that area right in there.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So the owners have said that it has been mowed from years. So right now it's the owners bought it from their in-laws. So since they were kids, they said it has been historically mowed. We have asked for pictures, but unfortunately they're in Florida right now and can't access their photos that are up here, but they should be back in the next couple weeks if you need.
Okay, so if the board feels strongly about having that area just be allowed to grow and not be mowed in the future, you can always come back and attempt to amend the permit once they're back from Florida. They have their pictures and they can prove to us that this area has been historically mowed.
Yes.
Sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
All right. Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you. Yes, as Erica said, all of our comments have been addressed. They have also added to the plan an area for DCPC plantings. And they have located a salt marsh on site, and they have added the existing trees to the plan. So we have no other comments. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments, Betsy.
Erica, thanks for addressing the comments. This looks good. It'll be a good project when it's completed. Thanks.
Thank you.
Kevin.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Steve.
No questions. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Erica. I meant.
Thank you.
I don't get thanked? Wow.
You get thanked all the time. You're letting Jennifer go crazy tonight.
All right. Erica, thank you for the very concise presentation last time and tonight. That's the way we like it. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat function, Mr. Chairman.
All right, if there's nothing further, I take a motion.
Make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second, Gladfelder.
Courtney, you're not on it. All right, we have a motion and a second to close this hearing. If there's nothing else, Betsy.
Gladfelder, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Steve.
And I.
It is unanimous with this quorum. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Ms. Norman.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night, Erica.
Night.
All right. Next up, a continued request for a hearing under an enforcement order, and that has been previously continued. So that brings us to vote orders of conditions. First up, 1517 LLC, number 17 Gosnold Road, Falmouth, Mass. And I have the quorum as all of us.
1 second, Mr. Chairman. There. 117. Got it. So, oh yeah, this was the Cape and Islands plan, kind of like these isolated coastal banks. Alyssa, did they confirm how many trees they were removing on this site? One tree will be removed,
One,
and then they confirm they're reconstructing the garage, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so basically this is just renovating the existing house. Doing some improvements to the paver driveway and walkway. And they have a pretty tight limit of work. So we didn't really have any conditions that we called out from a staff level.
A pretty clean project. Anybody have anything they want to see in there? All right.
Then I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Bird, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. There's nothing further. Betsy.
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney.
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Arlo Hawks, aye.
Melissa. Looks like we lost Melissa. Steve.
Aye.
All right. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, 117 Silver Beach Avenue, LLC, 117 Silver Beach Avenue, North Falmouth, Mass.
This is the raise and reconstruct. I think our concerns were they were putting the improvement plantings in where the knotweed was. can't find my paperwork on this one. Alyssa, did we propose a root barrier on this one? I think this is the one we did.
We did propose a root barrier.
Or recommend a root barrier.
Yeah, there is a large stand of Phragmites in the wetland. However, there is now also Japanese knotweed migrating towards the street. It's currently under the existing deck, which is where mitigation is proposed. So staff had questioned what the plan was moving forward. Are they proposing to eradicate that knotweed and use these improvement plantings as restoration, or would the board require them planting landward of the existing invasives?
I think that's what we finally came around to. We agreed that they would have to separate the invasives from where the planting was. The planting had to be landward of
the root barrier area.
The root barrier area.
Okay.
There was also only one tree on the property, so we were recommending at the staff level that that should be replaced.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good recommendation.
All right. Anything else?
We had asked for the first floor elevation on the plan.
Got it.
Jen, I'm also not sure if we received BVW data sheets on this one. It's pretty straightforward, but.
Okay. We will get those, just so we have them in the file. They were moving the house closer to the road. I mean, it's sitting right in that wetland right now.
Yeah.
So it is an improvement.
Yeah.
It is. Anything else? All right. What are you thinking?
I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Bird second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. Is there anything else? All right, Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Carlo Hawkeye.
Melissa.
Aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Robert J. Travers, trustee, Tumbleweed Nominee Trust, 26 Cotuit Road, North Falmouth, Mass.
Yeah, so this was doing a stair addition, proposed bluestone patio area, some invasive species management along the sides of the property, and proposed fire pit, and stepping stones. Staff has an issue with the fire pit and the stepping stones, and I'll show you why. And this was mentioned at the hearing, that there are two little cedar trees in their fire pit and stepping stone area. They said they wouldn't be removed, and they have to be removed in order to do this. So, I mean, they're further encroaching into that dune system. I understand the whole area is developed, and I get how the board can feel slightly conflicted in this area, but it is a dune. It meets the regulatory definition of a dune. It is providing the habitat functions of a dune. And I just don't feel that allowing further encroachment, because you're going to put Adirondack chairs or whatever type of seating arrangement around that fire pit area. It's going to further encroach into that dune, and you're just inviting people into that back area, which should be protected, which was required to be, or was shown to be protected when the original house went in. I think the patio is moving closer into that dune area. They are taking some vegetation out to put that walking patio area around. So yes, we have some concerns with that. But that's all I have. And if you'd like to see the two little trees, I'll show them to you.
So are you recommending that we decline the fire pit?
I'm recommending you decline the fire pit and the little patio area because in staff's opinion, that little patio walking area is moving closer into that dune. I mean, the whole site is a dune. You're just further encroaching, but at the very least, the patio and stepping stone area should not be, we should not, be allowing or inviting people back into that dune area. At the very least. I don't have an issue with the proposed restoration area, as I think Maury said, you've never seen a site with so much bittersweet on there. I mean, it's entirely all invasives along either property line. And then Nick had mentioned how he's going to be just, going into that back area. Where does it say June? Where on the plan does it say they were going to go back in a little bit and do very minor invasive removal back in that more pristine dune area? Well, as pristine as it can get being in this area development.
So the patio you're referring to is that proposed bluestone walk area?
Correct. It's just further encroaching into the resource area. That's why.
Right.
The whole thing is the resource area, though.
Correct.
I mean, all those houses are built on a sand dune.
Correct.
Yeah. I don't
I'm
have a
taking
problem with
a very-
the patio
I
area.
mean-
I'm okay with the fire pit being next. That's my opinion.
I mean, as the staff, Betsy, we got to take a real kind of like black and white, version
I
of
agree
the
with-
regs.
I agree with what Jamie just said. I don't mind the walkway. Eliminate the fire pit and encourage more planting there. I mean, that's what's going to stabilize that system.
Correct.
So a question.
Yep.
That proposed bluestone walk area is a walk. I mean, I get the idea of having the landing and stairs as a second egress to get out of there, but what's the bluestone walk if it's a walk and not a patio? What's it walking to? I mean, other than to the stepping
Walk around the
stones.
house.
But you can walk around the house and the yard. You don't have to.
Yeah, I think it's a misnomer. I think it's it is intended to be kind of like a patio.
Yeah, it does look like a patio. I mean, it's
Yeah.
they
200
And
plus feet.
and they have their grill area is 60 square feet. Does it have to go all the way to the basement entry? I mean, they've got their rinse station and their grill, and you can walk in your bare feet to the basement
That's what
entry.
they proposed, It is
Yeah.
still a net decrease in impervious surface, just to say it though.
It's a net deep. Oh yeah, because they removed.
Because
the
they're
pavement.
removing all that pavement. That's why they don't have mitigation requirements here, is they're removing that other pavement to offset the patio. It is a
So-
patio.
Yeah, it is a patio. It is a patio. It's but it's all a dune, and I'm all for saving the dunes and for allowing dunes to migrate and move in.
There's a house there. They
I
can't
know
migrate that
there's a
much.
house there. I know. I was moving on to the proposed fire pit and stepping stones. That is an encroachment into the dune area. So, yeah, I say definitely ex-nay the fire pit and stepping stones. When they first proposed it, I was a little horrified. I mean, yeah, they're all fun, but you have a piece of property that's really special, and you need to protect it. And actually, the leaving it pervious will protect their house, as it were.
Anything else?
Not for me.
Maury has a question or a comment.
Maureen?
But you have
Maury,
to
you're
unmute
muted.
yourself.
Did they tell us where the septic was? Which engineers should know that they're supposed to show approximate location of a septic on every plan, so that we don't have to ask.
We do have an old plan. I know the leaching is in the backyard area. The septic is, I think it's near the area of the proposed patio, as we're calling it.
Yeah.
I'm sure Jen could try to pull up a plan real quick.
Okay. Well, as long as they have it, because they're going to be bringing in that big underground propane tank. So they really
Right.
don't need to crush their tank, because it's not an H20, because it's in the back of the house. So anyway, that's their problem.
No, but that issue was raised. I mean,
It
Mike
was.
and Nick both, acknowledged that there was an issue that, they have to keep an eye on.
To locate it. I'm not a big fan of the fire pit and the stepstones, only because it is moving forward and I'm moving into the dune. As far as the walkway to get to the outdoor shower, and if you notice that there are, like storage doors underneath the house, they're getting rid of pavement. And to get rid of pavement is a great thing. That is actually the way it's pitched, it's running right toward the dune in the back of the house. So to see that gone is a great improvement. Getting rid of all of those invasives is a great improvement. And replanting, and again, the stairway to go down, they only have one egress. That's kind of scary. If I had kids and I lived there. So you want to walk around and go from going to the shower and being clean and going back into your house. It's a very practical thing. The fire pit and the stepstones, not so much. I mean, they can live without that.
Right.
That's my comment. Thank you.
I have a question.
I have a question. too.
Wait a second. I asked the question first. My question is,
Girls,
a propane tank, is there any worry about a storm there and having that propane tank floating?
They anchor them.
Okay.
They're all helical anchored.
Okay, thanks. That was, and I was going to ask during the hearing and I forgot.
So now you don't have to worry.
Now I don't have to, thank goodness.
Jen,
Jamie, don't they by code have to have two forms of egress out of the house?
yes.
So this isn't, Maury, this staircase is just a convenience thing. It's not a requirement for a second. They must have two forms of egress.
Did you see one? I tried to find one.
The basement entry.
Maybe
We don't
I-
have architectural.
When you say the
Must be
septic
the
is the,
garage area. They have the garage, they have the front door. They have a side door that goes to the covered patio, which that staircase is coming off of. Would the garage door, Jamie, Courtney, somebody, Maury, would that be considered your second form of egress, the garage?
I don't know, but I couldn't
we don't-
see.
Building
Not
is gonna,
direct answer.
It can't weigh
Building
more
code.
than 70 pounds. Garage
What?
doors weigh more than 70 pounds. An egress.
Yeah,
I'm going through it.
but building department is gonna pick up on that, right? That's a building code.
yes, well, what I'm saying is Maury made the statement that they only had one form of egress. Building never would have signed off on a house if it didn't have
I have two.
two.
Yeah, so why are we discussing it? It's
I'm just
10:09.
making- Okay, I know you're tired. I know you have to go to Wellfleet. I get it. I'm just making the point.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is most of you are okay with the walkway patio, but the fire pit and stepping stones go, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I think that covers an order of conditions, if you
Okay.
would accept that, Mr. Chairman.
Why don't you make a motion, Steve?
I am making a motion that we
Second, O'Brien.
issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Bird,
Gladfelter second.
Oh, man. Really not that long of a night.
It is getting late, that's all.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions as discussed. If there's nothing further, we're voting. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks eye.
Melissa,
Take exception to the Bluestone Walk, so no.
okay.
Pat and I.
All right. 6-1, we have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Vincent Alt Builders, 362 Ecopesket Road, East Falmouth, Mass.
He added additional trees to the plan.
Hold on, please. Again, quorum, the next three, I have Courtney, Maury, and Melissa are not on. And Maury and Melissa not on the last one as well, so you guys can take off if you want.
So I'll say
Night,
adjourn,
guys.
aye. Good night.
All right,
Aye.
All right.
sorry, Jen, I just wanted to clarify the quorum.
No, that's fine. So we lost Maury, Melissa, and Courtney?
Am I not on this one?
You're not on this one or the next two?
But how about the last
We've got a
one?
quorum. You're on the last one though.
Yeah, okay. So I'll just sit by.
Okay.
I am on the last one, right?
Correct, Courtney.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so they did what they said they were gonna do, but I think they're gonna have to shift some trees a
Yeah, I
little
think
bit.
there's 2 or 3 trees they need to shift in order, one, to avoid the tank or the leaching field. And one's like really close to the patio or the corner of the house. So we'll go through those and make the appropriate conditions to shift those trees around.
So I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
O'Brien, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. There's nothing further. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous with this quorum. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Caesar F. Palmer, trustee, Pondview Trust, 6 Hamlin Avenue, Falmouth, Mass.
This is the little parking area. Tom switched the plan to gravel pave instead of grass pave and identified a 680 square foot area if the system fails.
Can't ask for much more.
How about, would you like a motion?
I would.
Yelling at me.
I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
And second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. If there's nothing further. All right,
Lawyer.
Betsy.
What?
Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous with this quorum. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Paul Lieberman and Rachel Nager, P. Lieberman, 2015 Revocable Trust, 24 Westwood Road,
I have a note that you want all the trees inventory located in the buffer prior to work.
Yeah,
Correct?
correct.
Okay.
And they're definitely having a fence separating off where the buffer vegetation is, correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yes.
Steve, go to it.
The fence is not in a velocity zone, and I would say let's issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Come on,
O'Brien,
Kevin.
second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions as discussed. If there's nothing further, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. With this quorum, we have issued an order of conditions. And now Courtney can come back in. Next up, 190 Associates Road, Realty Trust, 190 Associates Road, Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
It's a fence in a velocity zone, and the question
they're doing
is,
some landscape improvements, garden beds, proposed garden bed. They're adding some mitigation. The fence is located in a V zone, but Alyssa, confirm that it's one of those wire, like chain link wire mesh fences.
I believe so. I'm looking on the plan. I think they call it mesh.
Yeah, it's mesh. It's not as big openings as a
1 inch,
traditional
I think he said.
chain link looking thing.
Yeah.
But it is in a velocity zone. So it's not a solid kind of stockade or composite looking solid fence. I think the attempt is to, if there is water, to allow water to go through the fence. They did locate the fence landward of the mitigation plantings instead of bisecting them. So that was nice to see. We just need to know what you would like to do with this type of fence.
I think Tom did a valiant job in overcoming the presumptions of the problems with having it. The fence is located behind a lot of vegetation, which if we do get a water surge there is gonna be the first to be impacted by it.
Okay.
I mean, that's how I feel. It's not like these fences that are right, not too close. I mean, not too far from where the big waves are coming in.
Okay.
But I don't know how anybody else feels.
I thought you were going the other way with what you were saying. I feel this will have minimal impact, but
Yeah, that's what I say.
I'd like to monitor it if we could, just to see. It's not going to wash away, and
Right. And then more importantly, for a velocity zone, it's not going to sail away. Well,
That's more the problems you have with the panel and the stockade type fencing is it's that sheer wall.
Mhm.
Whereas this is meant to allow somewhat water to go through.
Plus, it's likely with those solid things, when they're hit, you're going to have debris flying everywhere.
Right. Courtney?
Years and years ago, when we had fences in these sorts of situations, we used to require that they be elevated a foot or foot and a half off the ground to allow for animals to go through. Are we still doing that?
He actually
I can
proposed
write
that.
that in. Sure.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jamie. I think
That's
that was
how-
proposed.
What's that?
Steve?
That's how it was proposed in their presentation.
What's that?
That it would
They
be
already
raised.
said
It
that.
was 6 inches off the ground.
Is 6 inches enough to allow critters?
Won't let a
Anything that
coyote
can't
through.
jump over 2 feet.
Yeah,
Huh?
Courtney, it'll be fine. It'll let the little guys go through. Won't, a deer will jump right over it if it wants to.
All right, anything else?
There was one other note. We're still in need of a revised plan. There was a small increase in mitigation. The numbers were corrected, but the actual polygons of where it's going to be planted was not added to the plan. So there is the idea of just having confirmation of where it's being planted on site.
Got it. Forgot about that note. Sorry about that, Alyssa.
I thought he had added it. I thought there was a little crescent that was added.
I think that was the plan. I think it was the plan he showed. I don't think we've received that.
Oh,
If I'm incorrect, then we
I
will
haven't seen the
include
revised
that.
plan. We'll get it from Tom when he comes back into town.
They
But
were
he did show
previously
that, didn't he?
required- They were previously required plantings. I thought they were showing on that, the DCP plantings or.
No, this isn't in the DCP.
This is for the
The little heat pump on the side.
heat pump that it
Yeah.
was 6 square feet, so they're proposing 18. The plan that we received dated 3/1. The numbers were corrected, but it wasn't shown. I think Tom did.
He showed it to us when he came back. He showed us a crescent that was
Okay.
18 square feet.
he just
Take
didn't submit it yet.
He didn't
Yeah.
submit it yet.
That's fine.
That's the issue.
That's fine, but how did we know that?
I know, you don't. So we'll make sure that we get that plan.
Get
for
it.
you.
Perfect.
All right, anything else? All right, what are you thinking?
Make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Bird second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. Anything else? All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. With this quorum, we have issued an order of conditions. Thank you. And before the last motion, just a reminder, no meeting next week. So with that,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second, O'Brien.
nobody else wants to
Gladfelter,
leave.
aye.
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye.
O'Brien, aye.
Pat and I.
All right, it's unanimous.
night,
We're
guys.
adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Night,
Thank you,
everybody.
Good night.
See you all in a couple of weeks.